Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. Hess, and hey Rich, what topic I would speak on? By now everyone is probably wondering what will come out of my mouth. This is the beginning. First of all, let me ask you some questions. Young people, where do you come from? I'm from Bavaria. I'm from Cologne. I'm from Saxony. In Hamburg. People have stopped talking. From here it was my turn. We were born in different places. The faces are also different. Their ages are also different. Each person's life is different. But we have something in common. That is, we are all German. I was born in Austria. A small town called Braunschweig is my hometown. But I am German. The reason is that I consider myself German. There is only one thing I want to say to you. We are all Germans who live in Germany, for Germany, and are loyal to Germany, so why should we live hating each other? While taking deep breaths, no one opened their mouths. Everyone held their breath and waited for the next words to come. I want to help all Germans, Jewish and non-Jewish, if possible. We all want to help each other. If you're a true German, you should be. We want to live in everyone's happiness, not in each other's misfortune. We do not want to hate or despise others. Germany is a great country. This is the country that gave birth to Beethoven, Frederick the Great, Nietzsche, and Bismarck. However, causeless hatred and ignorance have poisoned our souls, blocked the entire country with a huge wall, and made us march towards misery and death. We have fallen because of our own foolishness. If we don't change this, the clock in this country will forever be stuck in 1918. Do you really want that kind of future? Thanks to the development of technology, we can hear each other's voices even if we are not face to face or if there is a distance between us that cannot be followed by our eyes. Even now, my voice reaches tens of millions of Germans. I say this to everyone who is listening to me right now: we must come together as one. The senseless hatred, discrimination, and disdain for one another are merely the result of the manipulations of those who are afraid of our development. Think about it. When we are busy fighting among ourselves, who will benefit the most? These are the enemies of Germany, the communists and those who follow their disgusting ideology. Don't be fooled by the lies they spread. I am sure hatred will pass, ignorance will disappear, and the power that Germany's enemies have taken from her will be restored. Because we will all fight for Germany. As long as we sacrifice our lives to fight, Germany will never disappear. Now let's fight for all of us. Let us reject greed, hatred and ignorance, eradicate poverty and fight together for a victory. Let us move forward for a great Germany, a Germany that reigns over the world, an eternal Germany. Dear German people. In the name of Germany, let us unite as one. A roar more fierce and louder than the sound of artillery fire heard on the battlefield enveloped the world. People's voices came together as one, creating a sound like a huge wave crashing. Hitler. 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 Sieg Heil. Heil Deutschland. Even after the speech was over, people's excitement did not subside. People everywhere are chanting my name. I raised my hand in greeting to the people shouting at me and then came down from the podium. How was it? Did it seem like something worth listening to? I deliberately looked towards Himmler and Goebbels and smiled. Both of their faces looked as if they had been hit on the head with a hammer. Choi, that was the best speech, Your Excellency. Today's speech will go down in German history. Heydrich, what about you? Yes. Oh, it was a perfect speech. Even Heydrich, who was rarely embarrassed, could not wipe the embarrassment from his expression. I was spreading the Jewish conspiracy theory more diligently than anyone else around me, but I was embarrassed because I personally certified in front of the public that the Jewish conspiracy theory is nonsense spread by communists. Now that I have done this, they will no longer be able to say anything about Jews in front of me or even in my absence. At the moment of speaking, I do not agree with what the Prime Minister said. I am a traitor. Because it would be like self-certifying. Of course, I do not expect that the anti-Semitism that has spread throughout Germany will disappear overnight with just one speech. It would be perfect if it were a worldview where people would come to their senses with a single speech like in a novel, but unfortunately, reality is not a novel. Reality is just reality. Still, this speech will not make anti-Semitism any worse than it is now. It will take decades to eradicate anti-Semitism itself, but the worst assumption that deepens hatred has been avoided. At the same time, Germany's national power will not decline as high-level human resources such as scholars, engineers, and doctors leave Germany. One of the Nazis' most outrageous acts was the expulsion or massacre of all Jewish scientists. This not only slowed down technological development, but also caused expelled scholars to settle in Britain and the United States and cooperate in destroying the Nazis. If we just left them alone, talented people who could have been used in some way were made to cooperate with the enemy country, so what else is this if not a stupid thing to do? Even if I die, I won't be able to see something like that until dirt gets in my eyes. Chapter 17 Chakaka 1. The speech I gave to the people attracted great attention even abroad. While there were positive reviews that it was one of the famous speeches that will forever be remembered in history, or that it was a heavy-handed pitch thrown at today's generation that is accustomed to discrimination, there were also criticisms that it was a communist drip. Still, the reaction was generally favorable. Needless to say, Hindenburg was already in awe of what I was saying, and even the military, who were looking at me with half support and half skepticism, seemed to think that I had done my job. In particular, even France, which had been raising the level of criticism against me due to the Night of the Long Sword incident, acknowledged that I think I said the right thing this time, so I was able to make a good save. This way, I won't have to worry about the Jewish issue for a while. After resolving the Jewish issue, a non-aggression pact was signed with Poland in October 1933. Until now, Germany was waging a trade war against Poland. Poland must have suffered just as Poland did, but Germany was not without damage. The continued decline in international reputation was a bonus. As was the case in actual history, a non-aggression pact with Poland will not only help stabilize the economy internally, but will also increase Germany's prestige, which has been declining internationally. It would also have the effect of making me seem like a flexible leader who, unlike existing German politicians, is willing to reach out to enemies first. Poland, which had suffered considerable damage from the trade war, readily accepted my proposal to stop the trade war and sign a non-aggression pact. They had been unable to talk about their cooperation in negotiations due to their pride, but when I suggested it first, they seemed very happy. Your Excellency, I am by no means against your wishes, but there is some talk about concluding a non-aggression pact with Poland. Not only in the military, but also in the private sector. As in Poland, and in Germany, where people gnash their teeth regardless of political party, voices of dissatisfaction were naturally bound to come out here and there. Let's assume that Korea colonized Japan and lost the war, but when Japan became independent, it took Dokdo, Ulleungdo, Jeju Island, and Gyeongsang Namdo. But how would the public react if the government signed a non-aggression pact with Japan? The entire nation will rise up and demand his resignation. The German people's hatred toward Poland was beyond imagination. Goering looked worried, but I answered with a calm face. That much was already expected. But, for now, this is the best. Right now, not only do we have to listen to foreign countries, but we also have to solve our economic problems. Of course, that doesn't mean I have any intention of leaving those Poles alone forever. Someday, we have to get back the territory that those guys took away. To do that, we need to hide our intentions for a while. Only then did Goering's face brighten. As expected, Your Excellency had a plan. I'm so glad. Why, did you even think I was giving in to the Poles? You're welcome. This is just one step back to take 2 steps forward. Shouldn't the economy be resolved first before rearmament or anything else can be done? Isn't that right, Minister Schacht? What? Right. Plummer Schacht, President of the Reichsbank and Minister of Economy, smiled awkwardly at my question. This is because when the German-Polish trade war broke out, it was Schacht himself who insisted that Poland should not give in and that retaliatory tariffs should continue to be imposed on Polish products. As planned, the German economy improved significantly. With the signing of the non-aggression pact, foreign investment increased, and the attitude of neighboring countries toward Germany became softer than before. Now it's time to move on to the next step. Oh, please come quickly. I smiled brightly and welcomed the 2 army officers who entered my office. I'm sorry for calling you suddenly. Even so, they are busy. No, Mr. Prime Minister. The identity of the mustachioed man shaking his head in a quick manner is Lieutenant General Oswald Lutz. And the name of the colonel standing next to him is Heinz Guderian. Among those who claim to be followers of Mild Duke, there may be people who have heard of Lutz for the first time, but I believe that there are none who do not know Guderian. Both of them made a decisive contribution to the creation of the German Armored Corps. In particular, Guderian made such a huge contribution to the creation of the Armored Corps that he was later called the father of German tanks. If you think about the performance of German armored units in World War II, you will understand how great their contribution was. 5 minutes later, even Defense Minister Blomberg arrived, bringing together everyone needed for this meeting. The reason I called you here to meet you is to discuss future tank development. Tanks, the flower of the army and the king of ground warfare, were essential for the qualitative improvement and growth of the German army. Although the development and possession of tanks was banned by the Treaty of Versailles, Germany, unable to give up tanks, developed tanks by disguising them as industrial tractors to deceive the Allied powers, and trained its soldiers with fake tanks made by covering cars with dummies made of linen and armored vehicles. All efforts were made to develop the unit. The armored units that were barely created made a big splash when World War II broke out and played a decisive role in creating the German military myth. But now it is 1934. The German armored forces, which would later conquer Europe, were in their infancy, with the tank number 1, which was armed only with 2 machine guns, being the latest tank. Let alone the Tiger and Panther, we have to wait 2 more years for even the 4th Panzer to be developed. In order to come up with Tank 4, we had to go through a lot of trial and error again. I wanted to make the most of my knowledge and contribute to the creation of German armored forces while preventing unnecessary waste. There are 3 tanks currently planned for development, a tank equipped with a 20mm cannon, a tank equipped with a 37mm main gun, and finally, a support tank equipped with a 75mm main gun. As you may have guessed, the tank equipped with a 20mm cannon is tank number 2, the tank equipped with a 37mm main gun is tank number 3, and the tank equipped with a 75mm main gun is tank number 4. Until this time, there was only one tank that had a proper name. As far as I know, the 20mm cannon-equipped tank was planned to fill the gap in tanks along with tank number 1 until the mass production of 37mm and 75mm class tanks. Is that correct? You're right. Right. This is just my idea, but is there really a need to make all 3? It's something I've thought about for a while, but I didn't see the need to make all 3, even spending precious resources, money, and time. If all 3 are limited to their assigned roles, they are well worth the money, but considering future wars, it would be much more profitable to focus on producing only the 4th tank. My opinion was to build only those that would be used for training purposes for the 1st tank, which had just been mass-produced, and to focus on producing the 4th tank. Think about it carefully. Tank 1 is a well-made tank, but it has very clear limitations. It may be useful for anti-infantry use as it only has 2 machine guns, but engaging enemy tanks is impossible. Of course. Lutz, Guderian, and Blomberg also nodded obediently. Even in their opinion, tank number 1 was not something that could be used in tank warfare. And the tank equipped with a 20mm cannon, for simplicity's sake, I would call it the 2nd tank. As far as I know, tank number 2 is also armed with one 20mm cannon and 1 machine gun. It may be more useful than tank number 1, but there are many doubts about its use in tank warfare. From what I have seen, among the tanks that France and the UK currently have or are developing, there are many heavily armored vehicles that can easily deflect a 20mm cannon from the front. How effective will Panzer II be when fighting these tanks? All 3 listened quietly to what I was saying. It seems like they also have a lot to think about after listening to me. Lastly, there are the 37mm class tank and the 75mm class tank. For convenience, we will call them Tank 3 and Tank 4, respectively. They say that the 3rd tank will be equipped with a 37mm main gun capable of anti-tank warfare and be used as the main force, and the 4th tank will be equipped with a 75mm main gun for infantry support and used to support the 3rd tank and the infantry. Is there really a need to divide it in such detail? What do you mean by that, Your Excellency? Blomberg asked. Literally. Is there really a need to classify tanks into 2 separate categories, hindering productivity and complicating the logistics system? The 37mm gun may be effective right now, but as the armor of tanks thickens in the future, its power will naturally be halved. Then, there is a need to exchange it for a different main gun. In that case, wouldn't it be easy to just use a 75mm main gun from the beginning? Tank 4 was originally created to mount a 75mm main gun, so it will be more convenient than Tank 3 even when mounting a larger gun. Tank number 1 had already been criticized as not being usable in actual combat since the Spanish Civil War, and Tank number 2 also made a great performance in the invasion of Poland, but in the invasion of France, it was used like the French Army's Hotchkiss and the British Army's Matilda tank. They faced superior tanks and made great sacrifices. Although Panzer III was better than the previous 2, it was still no match for the British and French tanks encountered during the invasion of France. In 1941, when it was replaced with a 50mm main gun, it seemed to be somewhat active, but even this was put to waste when the Soviet Army brought out heavy armored tanks such as the T-34 and KV-1. Even after replacing it with a long-barreled 50mm main gun, Its limitations were clear enough that it was defeated in a 1-1 match against the T-34 and M4 Sherman. On the other hand, the fourth tank was equipped with a 75mm main gun from its inception, so it was easy to mount a long-barreled main gun, and from 1942, when it was replaced with a long-barreled 75mm main gun, it played a significant role as a hidden card on the front line. What Rama wanted more desperately than the Iron Cross was the Panzer IV, equipped with a long-barreled 75mm main gun, and an 88mm anti-aircraft gun. Before the Tiger appeared, the Panzer IV was the strongest tank possessed by the German army. Although it is undervalued by the Tiger and Panther that appeared later, it is an old tank made in the 1930s, but it is a worthy fighter that fought against the new tanks T-34 and M4 Sherman that appeared in the 1940s until the end of the war. It is not for nothing that the German military nicknamed Panzer IV War Horse. According to history, wouldn't the sacrifices of tank soldiers who would have died while going to the front in tanks such as No. 1 or No. 2 be greatly reduced if they were to ride on tank No. 4? I thought everyone would strongly agree with my opinion. It is not an unreasonable request to produce the Tiger and Panther right away, but it is a reasonable opinion to produce only the fourth tank. But the results were quite different. That makes sense, Mr. Prime Minister. Blomberg, who had been quietly savoring his tea, opened his mouth. But, isn't it a bit difficult to make a judgment already when it's not even in the mass production stage yet? Weird. This is not the reaction I wanted. Although he didn't show it on the outside, unlike me who was taken aback by the unexpected reaction, Blomberg continued speaking in a calm tone. Of course, this doesn't mean that what you said is wrong. However, all three tanks are still in the development stage, let alone mass production. However, if the existing plan is already overturned by guessing, there may be great confusion later. That's my opinion too. It is a great honor for Your Excellency to take such great interest in the development of armored weapons, but weapon development is not something that is carried out through guesswork and speculation. It is something that develops through countless trials and errors, experiments, training, and practical use. Even the first tank has not seen combat, so I think it would be a bit too much of a leap to order halt to the development of tanks that are in progress. Even Lutz expressed his opposition to my opinion. The common opinion of these two was, isn't it going too far to stop it when the results haven't even came out yet? It was a reasonable enough statement if you just listened to it without considering the future, so I couldn't think of anything to refute. What do you think, Colonel Guderian? I looked at Guderian with a look on my face, hoping for help. Among them, the only one who had not yet expressed his opinion was Guderian. I think His Excellency Prime Minister's opinion is reasonable. Also, Guderian took my side. This is why people who learn are different. However, Guderian had one major weakness. Just rank. Hey, Colonel Guderian. You know it well, right? The development of weapons is not something that can be done with immediate guesses and judgments. Yes, that's right. Blomberg is the Minister of Defense, and Guderian is a colonel. Naturally, Guderian has no choice but to be pushed out due to class reasons. If you think about it that way, since I am the Prime Minister, it would be fine to suppress him based on his rank, but since the relationship between me and the military is still complicated and delicate, it seemed too obvious to use the authority of the Prime Minister to suppress him. In addition, Blomberg was one of the leading supporters of the Nazi Party within the army. If we press Blomberg here, we may end up giving only good numbers to the anti-Nazi faction. As the differences of opinion could not be resolved until the end, it was decided to reach a conclusion after seeking the opinion of the Ordnance Bureau. The Ordnance Department ruled in Blomberg's favor. Old bastards. The Ordnance Department opposed my opinion even more strongly than Blomberg. Not only the Ordnance Bureau but also other army generals came forward and expressed their opposition to my opinion, but it seemed that they misunderstood my intention as a first step to tame them. I wasn't planning on doing that at all just this time. Damn Junkers. Even Hindenburg tried to mediate, but to no avail. That's how stubborn the army's attitude was. The opposition within the army is very strong. Prime Minister. Please reconsider again. Yes, Hitler. Please give in this time. All right. I can't help it. As such, my great tank integration plan was in vain, and after long discussions with the army, I reached a compromise to postpone the decision until the test results of the prototype came out. Nothing is easy. Unlike the army, which was stubborn, the Luftwaffe, German Air Force, was somewhat conversant. Since Göring, the person responsible for creating the Air Force, is my right-hand man, and I also do not have much knowledge about the Air Force, I had no choice but to focus entirely on the opinions of those working in the field. Göring, who had transformed into a middle-aged man without being sick from morphine or gaining weight, had changed to the point where I wondered if he was the same Göring I knew. While actively listening to the opinions of his subordinates, he appropriately mediated conflicts between departments and placed the necessary talent in the right positions to maximize their efficiency. It also gave strength to Lieutenant General Walter Weber, who had originally been overshadowed by differences of opinion with Hitler and Göring. I support the general's opinion. As times have changed, strategies must also change. Isn't that right? That is a very wise statement, Mr. Prime Minister. Unlike most Air Force generals who were blinded by the immediate results and were fascinated by tactical bombing, Walter Weber firmly believed that strategic bombing, rather than tactical bombing, could change the game of war, and worked hard to develop a heavy bomber capable of strategic bombing. However, when Weber died in an accident in 1936, the development of his dream heavy bomber was virtually halted. But who am I? Wasn't he not the original Hitler, but a native Korean who experienced the 21st century newspapers? Unlike Hitler, I understood that strategic bombing was much more important than tactical bombing, so I decided to actively support Weber. I will tell Göring well. If you still have difficulties, please come visit us at any time. Don't pay attention to anyone. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I will definitely repay you with results. Weber must have been truly moved and even had tears in his eyes. There is no need to cry though. Well, both superiors and subordinates are busy half listening to what they say, but the Prime Minister, not just anyone else, not only listens to what they say but also supports them, so of course they can't help but be happy. In the case of the Kriegsmarine, German Navy, which was born earlier than history, it was a bit subtle. This was not because there were many anti-Nazis like the army, but because there was a big difference of opinion, starting with Admiral Erich Raeder, the most senior member of the Navy. Raeder was a great soldier who took good care of his subordinates and led by example, but he was an ardent believer in the old-fashioned ideology of big money bombing, so it was inevitable that he would naturally clash with me. No, I mean, how many times have I said that? Aircraft carriers are much more efficient than battleships? Of course, what the Prime Minister said is correct. We do need an aircraft carrier. I am aware of the importance of aircraft carriers described in your book Mein Kampf. Still, sir, aircraft carriers are only auxiliary, and the center of naval warfare is still battleships. Raeder also did not deny the need for aircraft carriers. However, they only irritate me by insisting that aircraft carriers should only play a supporting role to battleships and that battleships should play a leading role. The existence of a battleship is essential in order to destroy the enemy fleet with powerful firepower, seize control of the sea, and carry out a war of destruction. Please reconsider again. Raeder's argument was that a large number of battleships and battlecruisers armed with powerful firepower should be built, engage in decisive battle with the enemy fleet, destroy it, and then travel around the North Atlantic to conduct a war of trade destruction. It is true that battleships are also important. Not only during World War II but also until the 1960s, battleships that could support ground troops landing on the beach with large diameter guns were still a threat on the battlefield. However, if you calculate the time, cost, and manpower required for construction, it would not be an exaggeration to say that battleships were literally money guzzlers. Even if it was barely built, the basic maintenance costs alone would cost a fortune, and when a war breaks out, there aren't many places for battleships to be active. The Japanese battleship Yamato, which was theoretically the strongest battleship of its time, was sunk under concentrated attack by aircraft launched from aircraft carriers of the U.S. fleet and U.S. submarines. Until Yamato was sunk, the number of American aircraft shot down was only about 10. This is truly the worst value for money. Unlike Raeder, Karl Donitz, later a naval marshal, was much more communicative. Donitz also thought that although battleships were necessary, aircraft carriers and U-boats, submarines, were much more efficient than battleships, which were expensive and had limited uses. The problem was that Donitz was only a colonel. He became a colonel because I specially promoted him, so he should have still been a lieutenant colonel. In contrast, Raeder's rank is captain. He would be promoted to senior captain in 1936. If you replace the captain and appoint a colonel as the head of the Navy, there will be chaos. I have no choice but to coordinate my opinions with Raeder as much as possible. I already feel like my head is going to explode. Chapter 18 Kchachaka, 2, August 2, 1934 Paul von Hindenburg, hero of the Battle of Tannenberg and German president, has died. The day before he received his heavenly call, I headed to Hindenburg's house with my entourage. One theory is that Hindenburg, who was lying in a sick bed, saw Hitler and mistook him for Wilhelm II and called him Your Majesty, but that did not happen. I'm here, Mr. President. You're here. Hindenburg seemed to be struggling even to speak now. He wanted to talk to me a lot, but his body wouldn't let him. As you can see, I'm not feeling very well. I guess it's time to go. Please don't say things like that. Your Excellency will definitely shake it off and get back up again. No. I know my body better. This is the last time. I've lived long enough anyway, so I'm not afraid of death. However, it just leaves me with a lot of regret. I wanted to go and see Germany reigning over the world again. Our conversation ended there. Hindenburg collapsed, and his doctor rushed over to check on the president's condition. I had no choice but to say goodbye and leave. The next day, Hindenburg died. Marshal Rose's last will was My Majesty the Emperor, my Germany. Before he died, he left me a letter, praising me for working faithfully under him and leaving behind many achievements, as well as a request to reinstate the former Kaiser Wilhelm II, who was in exile in the Netherlands. Needless to say, it was nagging and I had no intention of doing so. Not at all. Even in the previous regression, I died because of those damn junkers, so who cares? Above all, the Kaiser is no longer of any use to Germany. If it were the 21st century, it would be of some help in attracting tourists and selling souvenirs, but in Germany in 1934, it would be okay. Why should I reinstate a man whose only accomplishment was to trash his country and run away to a neutral country? What did the Kaiser do for me while I was in this position? There will never be a Kaiser in power again in this country. What Germany needs now is me, not the Kaiser. It's me, Adolf Hitler. Hindenburg's funeral was held with a state funeral. After the funeral, I decided to serve as both Prime Minister and President. That's how I became President. When I became President, I first abolished the Treaty of Versailles and reinstated the conscription system. Restrictions on the military and possession of new weapons, which had been prohibited by the Treaty of Versailles, became possible, and all able-bodied German men were required to undergo a conscription examination and enlist. Germany's declaration of rearmament caused great controversy not only domestically but also around the world. In addition to the statement of condemnation, the leaders of Britain, France, and Italy gathered in Stresa, Italy and agreed to build a common front against Germany, creating the so-called Stresa system, thereby revealing the check on Germany. But I wasn't worried. They were only talking loudly, but they had no intention of going to war. The incident that proved this was the Anglo-German naval treaty signed with Britain in January 1935. Although the Stresa system was established, Britain, which wanted to avoid armed conflict with Germany as much as possible, attempted to make individual contacts with Germany and began a full-fledged effort to appease Germany. The result was the Anglo-German Naval Treaty, which limited the displacement of capital ships to a maximum of 35,000 tons, but allowed the German Navy to build warships up to 35% of the total tonnage of the Royal Navy's capital ships. As a result, Germany was able to break away from previous restrictions and legally accelerate the rebuilding of its surface fleet. When I came back with the gift of the Anglo-German Naval Treaty, Leather, who had been stubborn about my opinions until now, became a little more compliant. His love for battleships was still the same. Still, my true intention was that I wanted to be with Leather for as long as possible. Ability is an ability, but during the last return, even though he was a royalist, he rescued me from being imprisoned in the Afvir basement and tried to take me away on a U-boat. However, his attempt failed because the Junkers noticed first, and he was executed for treason. Like Letter, Donitz, who was a royalist but loyal to me, also met the same end. Even animals know grace, but if people forget, they use it. How do you like it? This is by far the best drink I've had in a while. I invited him to dinner for an honest conversation. The wine that Letter just drank was the highest quality Chateau Lafite Rothschild specially brought in from France. Since I don't know much about wine, I told him to bring the expensive one, but the more expensive one had a different scent. It's not the highest quality for nothing. As I was cutting a well-cooked medium grilled veal steak, a dish highly recommended by Göring, I was in awe. As the Admiral knows, we in Germany are short on money right now. There are a lot of things that need to be made, but the budget is limited. Of course. Economy Minister Schulmerschaft is working hard to revive the economy, but the country still lacks money. Since we are short on money, we have no choice but to use it as frugally as possible, but we cannot build battleships that require an astronomical amount of money. In fact, it is not impossible to create the large fleet that Letter wants. To do that, you have to give up the army and air force. We have to build not only battleships, but also U-boats, destroyers, and put sausages on the soldiers' plates. There are many places to put money. Why would I hate battleships? I would like to have all the battleships in the world if I could. He. Even though it's a calf, it doesn't change the fact that it's a cow, so I wondered if it would taste different, but it really did. It was much softer and sweeter than regular beef. Just killing me. Let's do it this way. When I judged that the atmosphere was sufficiently ripe, I explained the plan to increase naval power, commonly known as Plan Z. The original Z plan was to build 10 battleships, 3 battle cruisers, 4 aircraft carriers, 12 pocket battleships, 5 heavy cruisers, 35 light cruisers, 68 destroyers, 249 U-boats, and 90 torpedo boats, but of course this was unreasonable. I worked hard to revise this crazy plan, and as a result, Plan Z was drastically reduced from its historical counterpart. There are 4 battleships, 8 heavy cruisers, 16 light cruisers, aircraft carriers and torpedo boats remain the same, 40 destroyers, and 300 U-boats. What do you think? It seems there are more U-boats than I expected. Admiral, you don't know very well how active U-boats were in the last war. Originally, the plan was to build 500 ships, but even this was modified. If you feel the same way, okay, I understand. Leather didn't seem to like it very much, but eventually accepted my plan. At least he was a person who did not ignore reality. Actually, I doubt whether even this will be able to dry in time. It's been a long time since our engineers built a battleship, and the Army and Air Force are also complaining that too much budget is being allocated to the Navy. I know. Still, I am grateful that His Excellency the President thinks so much about the Navy. I'm glad you understand. This is a little later, but let's talk about tank development in advance. Tank number 2, which was finally decided to be developed despite strong opposition from the Army, was successfully produced as a prototype. The test results of the prototype were successful, and mass production was naturally decided. After convincing the military for a long time, we agreed to mass produce only 500 units and to stop mass production of tank number 1 from December 1935, when mass production of tank number 2 began. Tank number 3, for which the Army had the highest expectations, met a different fate than tank number 2. A prototype was released in December 1935, but the coil spring suspension applied to Panzer III had problems, making driving virtually impossible. The Ordnance Bureau, embarrassed, replaced the coil spring suspension with a leaf spring suspension and changed the official name from Panzer III Type A to Type B to create a second prototype, but this one also went viral soon after it started running. Fail again? I'm sorry, Mr. President. Now that we have figured out most of the problems, it will be fine next time. Please wait a moment. Engineers created Type C, which corrected various problems in Type B, but even this Type C had many problems. Not only was there frequent minor breakdowns, but when the output was increased, a fire broke out in the engine. It's brand new and fresh from the factory. Were you planning on sending soldiers to the front lines in this trash? Well, Mr. President. That's not it. There must be some mistake. So, if you give us a little more time and budget, do you know that this is already the 3rd time I've said that? How many chances should I give you? What will you do next time if you get the same result? Are you going to spit out all the money you've wasted? I did not miss the opportunity to push the Ordnance Bureau, and eventually got them to surrender. Development of Panzer III was discontinued. As a result, Tank Number 3 and Assault Gun Number 3 would no longer appear in the world. Since Issue 3 was sold out, there was only Issue 4 left. Tank Number 4 was planned to be heavily armored under my direction from the beginning, taking into account the strengthening of the armament of later generations. The armor value of the front part of the hull should be 80 mm, the front armor of the turret should be 50 mm, the sides and rear of the hull and turret should be 30 mm, the maximum speed should be 40 km per hour, and the overall weight should not exceed 26 tons. Is that possible? It is possible, but in this case, it will be different from the original plan and will take more time to develop. Do you mind? It's okay. It would be nice if the results came out quickly, but I know that it would be difficult in reality. It may take some time, but create the perfect item. Do you understand? Alright. At this time, I was planning not only the Panzer IV, but also a derivative version using the chassis of the Panzer IV. First of all, there are only 5 self-propelled guns, rescue tanks, bridge tanks, assault tanks, and anti-aircraft tanks. There were countless variants of the 4th Panzer, but their roles and performances often overlapped with each other. Number 4 assault gun, number 4 tank destroyer, etc. It is not a buffet, and it is never a good thing to have many weapon systems with similar performance on display. It was necessary to block this in advance because it not only made the military logistics system unnecessarily complicated, but also had a negative impact on productivity. If Germany's original history was small-scale production of many varieties, I planned to change it to mass production of small varieties. Since I had received negative orders regarding the development of the 3rd Panzer, the Ordnance Bureau engineers did their best to work on it this time. In addition, all the capital and manpower that would have originally been invested in the development of Panzer III were invested in the development of Panzer IV, so the speed of development was surprisingly fast. The first Panzer IV prototype appeared in May 1937. After seeing the prototype, I couldn't help but express my satisfaction. Yes, this is it. I wanted this. The Type 4 F1 tank, which would appear only in 1941, was before my eyes. The Ordnance Bureau generals and technicians who were looking at me with anxious faces let out the breath they had been holding when they saw me cheering and were relieved. Anyone who sees me will think I came back from the dead. Don't kill them, you guys. Thank you for your hard work. It looks like you didn't sleep well. You really did a great job. Thank you, Mr. President. With a smile on my face, I approached the technicians who were sweating and taking out handkerchiefs. Now, it would be perfect if we just changed the main gun to a bigger and stronger one. Now, didn't you hear well? The technicians' faces turned pale, as if they had seen ghosts. Why are you so surprised? I was just stating the obvious. Gondori tastes best when it is rolled. Chapter 19. Like a opened baguette. What did you just say? Literally. I plan to deploy troops in the Rhineland soon. At the end of June 1935, I gathered military personnel and announced my intention to reoccupy the Rhineland. Blomberg and the pro-Nazi generals who had been informed in advance looked calm, but the rest were astonished as if they had seen some kind of ghost. Immediately a huge amount of opposition erupted. It's impossible, Mr. President. If that happens, France won't stand still. The Wehrmacht is not ready yet. If war breaks out now, we will be pushed straight to Berlin. Among the Wehrmacht generals, the one who most vehemently opposed it was Army Chief of Staff Ludwig Beck. Mr. President, this is a very dangerous idea. Please reconsider. Because he was one of the most senior soldiers in the army and had been active as a staff member since World War I, his position in the army was beyond imagination. I also knew him well. In the original history, he was the head of the Black Orchestra, a group of anti-Nazi figures in Germany, and committed suicide after carrying out Operation Valkyrie, a plan to assassinate Hitler. And in the last return, he raised a coup and confined me and shot at the end. I quietly turned my head and looked into Beck's eyes. Beck shrank when he caught my gaze, but he did not look away. General Beck, I also know what worries you. Yes, I am concerned that France is sending troops as soon as we set foot in the Rhineland. Yes, Mr. President. If the Wehrmacht, which has just been rearmed, were to face the French army, the strongest army in Europe, it would have absolutely no chance of winning. Unfortunately, this is the reality. But you only know one thing and don't know the other. Yes. The French want to avoid war more than we do. Let me ask you something. Do you know what damage France suffered in the Great War? Why is that suddenly? It seems like you don't know, so I'll tell you. In the Great War, France suffered as many as 5 million casualties. Of these, 1,385,000 were declared dead or missing. Of course, all the casualties were young Frenchmen. France suffered enormous damage in one war, losing one-third of its key talent responsible for the country's future. Even now, France has not fully recovered from the damage. That's why the French fear war more than anyone else. If another war breaks out and the same thing happens again, France will truly be finished. The country itself, France, has disappeared from the map. Because the Western Front of World War I was formed within the territory of Belgium and France, France not only lost its land in ruins but also lost many of its young people. For France, which had already entered an aging society in the late 19th century, the decimation of its youth was a damage that could never be recovered. Although it suffered the humiliation of being occupied by Germany and reduced to a puppet state during World War II, the fighting itself in France was over in a short period of time, so the damage to its youth was somewhat minimal. However, in World War I, trench warfare was repeated for 4 years, so the country's young people had to be separated literally every day. For this reason, even in the 21st century, France considers World War I to be a more terrible past than World War II. It's only been 17 years since that hellish war ended, so how many French people would agree to start another war? France is a coward. It is a country full of bravado that shouts loudly in words but is more afraid of war than anyone else. Actually, it's not that different for us, but the French people are more afraid of war than the German people are. And I'm trying to exploit the feelings of the French people. You must know that with time our Wehrmacht will become stronger, but at the same time the fears of the French will also be diluted. By the time we have completed all preparations, the French will also be ready to go to war with us. Before that, we have to hit the player first. Of course, your concerns are not something I don't know about. If a fight breaks out with the French army, it will immediately lead to a large-scale conflict, and since we lack weapons, ammunition, and soldiers, we will be no match for the French army. Therefore, I will withdraw my troops as soon as the French show any sign of movement. How do you feel? Are you sure? I finally got over it. Although he appears to be strong, Beck is actually a very indecisive person. The characteristic of people like Beck is that when you gently appease and offer a compromise, they immediately bite back. I guarantee it in the name of the German Führer. Wouldn't this be enough? If you say it that way. Step 1 solved. Now we have to move on to step 2. News that the German army was making suspicious movements along the Rhine River soon reached the French military leadership. What on earth are these guys planning now? Maurice Gamelin, the commander-in-chief of the French army, was so frustrated that he was on the verge of bursting out. The culprit was, of course, Germany and Germany's Führer, Adolf Hitler. Hitler was an unusual person. A human weapon who was awarded a medal by Hindenburg, a war hero of the time, for his exploits of single-handedly destroying 2 tanks and killing dozens of British soldiers in battle as a corporal. A monster of monsters who even predicted the Great Depression and Japan's invasion of China through his autobiography. After becoming prime minister, he mercilessly destroyed the opposition, while also attracting the people to his side with his unique charisma and speeches, reaching out to Poland, which was his enemy, first, and even signing a non-aggression pact to solve economic problems. Is there such an unusual person? Lenin of the faraway Soviet Union would have to be comparable to Hitler. Considering all the information available to date, Hitler had only one intention: reoccupation of the Rhineland. Although the Rhineland, the area stretching from the French and Belgian-German borders to the Rhine River, was German territory in principle, it was a demilitarized zone where German troops were not allowed to be stationed. Thanks to the designation of the Rhineland as a demilitarized zone, the French and Belgians were able to sleep with their legs stretched out, relieved that even if war broke out immediately, it would take time for Germany to cross the border. But what if the Rhineland disappears? France has no choice but to face off again with the German army across the border. It was natural that German artillery shells would fall like rain on French territory as soon as war broke out. No way. We must stop it no matter what. Gamelin, who was in a panic, immediately summoned the French military leadership and held an emergency meeting. However, the conclusion of the meeting was more than disappointing, it was shocking. Your Excellency, as you know, the defense budget was drastically cut due to the Great Depression. Yes. Because of that, our military was greatly weakened. In order to train, we need money to buy fuel and ammunition, but how can we train often when we barely even have to pay the soldiers' salaries? Among the divisions deployed to the front lines, only a handful have undergone training. The morale of the soldiers is low. I know. But the Germans have made great progress, not only in number but also in quality. Hitler was more sincere than anyone else about strengthening national defense. It's still like that now. There is no change in the fact that our French army is the strongest in Europe, but the German army is by no means an easy opponent. In fact, they are superior to us in terms of the morale and proficiency of their troops. In addition, according to a report from the Ministry of Intelligence, the size of the German army scheduled to be deployed to the Rhineland is close to 300,000. So if war breaks out, enormous damage is expected. Public opinion is also of the opinion that armed conflict should be avoided as much as possible. In short, it meant that it was impossible to fight Germany alone. Gamelin reported the results of the meeting to President Albert Lebrun and Prime Minister Pierre Laval. I never thought the military's report would be so despairing. A wailing sound naturally came out of Lebrun's mouth. I had firmly believed the words of military figures that the French army was the strongest in Europe, but when I received a report that it might be pushed back if it went to war with Germany, I felt like I had been hit hard in the back. However, there is no way the military filed a false report. They have an extremely high nose and often don't listen properly, but aren't they experts in their field? Moreover, you can't trust that the proud French military has come to a conclusion that may hurt its pride. I think it will be difficult for France alone to compete against Germany. Laval said. Maybe this would be good? Let's ask our allies for help first. Britain responded coldly to France's request for help. Britain, which had signed the Anglo-German naval treaty with Germany in January of the same year, had no desire to be hostile to Germany. Since the Rhineland was German territory anyway, Britain's position was to allow the stationing of German troops. With British help thwarted, France approached Italy. However, Italy's reaction was not much different from the UK. In order for Italy to attack Germany, it had to pass through Austria, but Austria was a neutral country and there was no way it would allow Italian troops to pass through. Above all, Italy was preparing to invade Ethiopia. Italian elite divisions have already been gathered in Italian Somaliland and Italian Eritrea, but to support France, these divisions must be brought back to Europe. Of course, the invasion of Ethiopia is a no-go. Mussolini, who wanted to invade Ethiopia at all costs and make it a colony, rejected France's offer. Mussolini also rejected our offer. You can't do this. France was embarrassed after being betrayed by its most trusted key allies. Britain did not have high expectations due to the Anglo-German naval treaty, but I thought Italy would be an exception, but when it was rejected, it was quite a shock. It is still too early to give up hope. There are other allies besides Britain and Italy. Although it was rejected by both countries in succession, it had many other allies. Belgium's position was that it could not tolerate German troops entering the Rhineland, and Czechoslovakia also announced that it would support France from the rear if it took military action. But these countries were too small. The French military leadership was also skeptical about how helpful the armies of these countries would be if war broke out, and this was true. There was Poland. It would definitely be different in Poland. Poland, a powerhouse in Eastern Europe, would understand France's position. However, as if mocking these expectations, Poland, like the UK and Italy, gave only vague answers. If France is invaded by Germany, we will participate in the war in accordance with the Franco-Polish military alliance concluded in 1921. However, this can only come into effect if France is invaded. To put it simply, they were saying that they would not participate in the war unless France was invaded. Reactions from Romania and Yugoslavia were also lukewarm. Since these countries did not share a border with Germany like Italy and had no significant contact with Germany, they had no desire to join in the dangerous gamble of war. No, how can all the allies not be helpful? Lebrun was dumbfounded. Of all the many allies, only 2 countries will join forces with France. Fortunately, both countries were small countries that would not be of much help if war broke out. I think it's time for us to step aside, Your Excellency. Laval said. I understand. We have no choice but to step back. On August 7, 1935, the Wehrmacht entered the Rhineland. The gamble was a huge success. What do you think? Am I right? As expected, nothing can compare to His Excellency the President's insight. As the reoccupation of the Rhineland was successfully completed, the whole of Germany was in a festive mood. Newspapers and broadcasts praised me every day, and people shouted Sieg Heil and hung up Hakenkreuz flags from every house. Your Excellency the President's genius is insurmountable. I learned a lot this time, Mr. President. Even military figures who opposed me rattled hard. Even that Beck. It looks like they're trying to wash their image right now, but it's already too late, guys. I spoke with Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop without even looking at the generals who had expressed their opposition to me until the very end. Now it's pasta time. What does that mean? Ribbentrop tilted his head. Do you by any chance want some pasta? Should I tell the chef? No, that's not what I meant. After taking a sip of Coca-Cola with ice in it, I whispered to Ribbentrop. Ribbentrop, I have a task for you. Just say the word, Mr. President. Ribbentrop seemed excited when I told him I had something to entrust to him. If you give an order, it looks ready to jump out the window. Oh, of course this is the 2nd floor. I need to go to Africa. As soon as possible. Do you mean Africa? Okay. Ribbentrop's eyes widened as if my words were unexpected. You probably didn't know that Africa would pop up, let alone anywhere else. Which part of Africa are you talking about? Egypt? Morocco? Or South Africa? It's all wrong. It's Ethiopia. Chapter 20 Like burning pasta. 1. 2 months from now, Italy invades Ethiopia. Italy had already invaded Ethiopia in 1894, over 40 years ago. And it suffered a crushing defeat, earning the stigma of being the first European power to be defeated by an African country. Mussolini, who was crazy about the ambition to build a second Roman Empire, conquered Ethiopia to make up for the humiliation of the previous war and emerge as a true power. In addition to connecting Eritrea and Somaliland by land, they also rob Ethiopia of its resources to revive its economy. In fact, if you really want to revive the economy, you should reduce military spending rather than prepare for war, but if that is possible, it is not Italy. Italy will definitely invade Ethiopia within 2 or 3 months. This is supported by Italian troops deployed in Eritrea and Somaliland. Before war breaks out, you must go to Ethiopia and convey my intentions to the Ethiopians. Italy will soon invade, and I want to establish friendly relations with you. I understand, Mr. President. But there's something I'd like to ask you. Tell me. Don't we have no contact with Ethiopia? Is there any reason why we should approach Ethiopia first? Ribbentrop's doubts were natural. There is no need for us to reach out to countries in Africa or even Europe first. However, the answer to this question had also been thought about in advance for a long time. First of all, we need to induce Ethiopia to fight Italy as fiercely as possible and drain Italy's national power. Italy will become an obstacle to Germany's development in the future. At the same time, if we have friendly relations with Ethiopia, countries in similar situations as Ethiopia will be in a friendly position toward us. There are not many countries around Germany that are friendly to Germany. From Britain to France, Poland, and the Soviet Union, they are all hostile to us. To do that, we need to turn our attention to foreign countries and create a large number of countries that are friendly to us. But how helpful will countries like Ethiopia be? That's right. Of course, I don't have very high expectations either. What I value more is image. If Germany is to escape even a little of the international community's scrutiny, it first needs to redefine its existing image. With the Pearl of the Rhineland, the world has begun to be wary of us again. But the invasion of Ethiopia will turn the attention of the international community from Germany to Italy. If we take advantage of that and show our support for Ethiopia, which is the victim, we will be able to wash our existing image to some extent. Lastly, Ethiopia has numerous varied resources, including gold and iron ore. If we have friendly relations with Ethiopia, we will be able to easily supply these resources. It may take some time, though. Only then did Ribbentrop's stark expression brighten a little. He still looks somewhat skeptical about my words themselves. Well, sir. Then, I will go to Ethiopia. Are preparations for the invasion of Ethiopia going well? Italian dictator and Prime Minister, Benito Mussolini, spoke in an arrogant manner to Marshal Pietro Badoglio, who was much older than him. Although Badoglio was a prime minister and did not like Mussolini's arrogance, he was polite in his presence. Yes, Duce. All preparations are going according to plan. That's right. In Great Italy, failure is a no-brainer. This time, we must conquer those barbaric blacks and avenge the shame of the last war. I'll keep that in mind. His Majesty also expressed his strong approval of this conquest. If the war ends successfully, your names will be recorded forever in history. Isn't that something to be proud of? That's right. Another bluff. Badoglio secretly laughed at Mussolini, calling him a clown imitating Caesar. I wanted to stop listening to this guy's boring sermons. There is already a lot of work to be done in preparation for the invasion of Ethiopia. You probably have a lot of work to do, too. Just go now. Badoglio, finally freed from Mussolini's tirade, left the official residence at a brisk pace. Today was a bit short. It's equally disgusting to hear. Thank you for your hard work, Your Excellency. Badoglio's adjutant approached and handed him a coat. His face was full of respect and pity for his enemy. I don't know how long I can listen to that guy's nonsense. I'll have to go back first, take a bath, and then quench my thirst with wine. Even if it wasn't, I told it to the soldiers on duty in advance. After Badoglio left, Mussolini, left alone in his office, stared intently at the world map hanging on the wall. The proportion of land occupied by Italy on the map seemed too small to him. It was so small. Ethiopia, inhabited by uncivilized blacks, can never be a match for Italy. The last war was simply the result of coincidence and misfortune. Ethiopia is destined to come under the Italian flag. It had to be that way. After Ethiopia was swallowed up, it was Albania. Albania, which is already economically semi-subordinate to Italy, will not be able to defend against an Italian invasion. Not only Albania, but also Yugoslavia, Greece, Turkey, and even Austria had to become part of Italy. Wouldn't that make it a powerful region suitable for the new Roman Empire? To do so, Britain, France, and Germany will become obstacles, but this too can be overcome. This country is a descendant of Rome. And I am Dusko from Italy. Even today, Mussolini is inflated with his grand dream of building a new Roman Empire. This is Joachim von Ribbentrop. It is truly an honor to be able to have an audience with His Majesty the Emperor. Nice to meet you too, Minister Ribbentrop. Welcome to Ethiopia. Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie reached out to Ribbentrop first. This is Prime Minister Mikonnen Ndelkaku. Nice to meet you. Originally, Prime Minister Ndelkaku would have welcomed the guests instead of Emperor Selassie coming in person, but the other person was too big a person. Not a diplomat from a weak country in Africa or South America, but the Foreign Minister of Germany, one of the most powerful countries in Europe. Moreover, wasn't Ribbentrop one of Hitler's closest associates? Why did he came to Ethiopia? Selassie, who was most curious about this, strongly insisted that he too meet Ribbentrop and talk to him. Thank you for your hard work in coming this far. No. It was a comfortable trip. After the three people sat down, the emperor's servants served coffee and refreshments. The servants withdrew and a sensitive conversation took place immediately. I would appreciate it if you could answer honestly. Why on earth did the German foreign minister came to this distant land? Ndelkaku said. I am here on the orders of His Excellency the Führer, Prime Minister. The Führer asked me to convey this to His Majesty the Emperor. To Your Majesty the Emperor? The envelope Ribbentrop took out contained a handwritten letter from German Führer Adolf Hitler. When Ribbentrop handed it over, the Emperor's chamberlain accepted the letter. The interpreter interpreted the contents of the letter and read it to Selassie and Ndelkaku. The eyes of the two people who listened to the conversation in silence became sharp. I had a guess that Italy would attack our country. It seems Germany had the same thought as me. Selassie clicked his tongue and said. Ethiopia is not an idiot either, so it had already noticed that Italian troops were being reinforced in Eritrea and Somaliland. However, I refrained from making a diplomatic protest for now just in case, But now there is no need to do so. War will soon break out and Ethiopia will have to make significant sacrifices. Kaku's expression suddenly darkened. Selassie also did not look good. The letter contained not only news of Italy's invasion preparations, but also Hitler's message that Germany would support Ethiopia. Germany may not be able to provide much support due to difficult circumstances, but even Selassie and Kaku, as well as the interpreter, could not help but be surprised when they heard that they would provide various weapons and supplies, such as rifles, grenades, and machine guns, to the Ethiopian army. Minister, is this really true? The president does not lie. He said he would, so you can believe him. Ribbentrop took a sip of coffee. Ethiopian coffee had a much stronger aroma and taste than the Brazilian coffee I drank in Germany. The coffee in a country famous for coffee is truly different. It's very good. We are grateful for the president's support, but why are you doing this to us? Even if you just think about it, I don't know that this country has ever provided any help to Germany in the past. The letter stated that the reason Germany supported Ethiopia was because the courage and fighting spirit shown by the Ethiopians in the past deeply resonated with him and that he wanted to build a long-term friendly relationship with the brave Ethiopians. Selassie was moved by those words, but he was also certain that this was not the whole reason. There must be other reasons. Do you know, Your Majesty, that during the Great War, Italy fought against Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire? I know that much. Then the answer came. The Führer is strongly convinced that Italy, a former enemy, will continue to hinder Germany in the future. Italy is both Germany's enemy and Ethiopia's enemy. If so, shouldn't Germany and Ethiopia naturally join forces? Selassie burst out laughing at Ribbentrop's words, which were nothing short of clearing water. I understand. That's right. If you are the enemy of your enemy, then you are your friend. Selassie stood up, approached Ribbentrop, and offered to shake his hand again. I know very well the reputation of your president. I haven't read Mein Kampf, but I have heard well that the Führer's insight is outstanding in many ways. It is indeed true. The German-Ethiopian talks were successful. Selassie hosted a banquet for the German delegation, including Ribbentrop. It was a luxurious banquet filled with the best delicacies from Ethiopia. The German delegation had a hard time because Ethiopian cuisine did not suit their taste. The day the German delegation returned to Germany, 2 cargo ships left the port of Kiel for Ethiopia. The cargo was scheduled to be delivered to Ethiopia through British Somaliland. October 3, 1935. Italy's invasion of Ethiopia led to the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. Chapter 21. Like burning pasta, 2. When Italy invaded Ethiopia, the world situation was shaken again. Ethiopia reported Italy to the League of Nations, but the League of Nations, which had long ago degenerated into an empty power, was unable to provide any help. They only issue formal warnings and statements of condemnation. Britain and France also condemned Italy's invasion of Ethiopia and declared that they would impose economic sanctions on Italy, but these were just words. The United States, which had just begun to emerge from the recession through the New Deal, was also indifferent to Ethiopian affairs. The same was true for the Soviet Union and Japan. Italy's act of aggression is clearly a criminal act. Germany strongly protests against this barbaric invasion of Italy and at the same time demands the immediate withdrawal of Italian troops. I also jumped on the bandwagon and issued a statement condemning Italy. Since I have no intention of provoking Italy any more than necessary right now, I was planning to stop at a formal protest for now. Of course, that's only outwardly. My Ethiopian friends will have to fight well. Since His Excellency the President has provided us with weapons and instructors, won't you fight hard? Goebbels' words. In fact, Goebbels did not seem to be very interested in Ethiopian affairs. By the way, Mr. President, there are rumors that the military may have been giving Ethiopia more than necessary. Himmler said. I shook my head. They always do that. No matter what I do, there's nothing but complaints. Didn't they just complain even before in the Rhineland? The military did not oppose my idea of providing weapons to Ethiopia, but complained that too much supplies had been distributed. Although it was a bit much, I didn't think it was excessive enough to warrant comment. In particular, Beck openly talked behind my back, saying that giving weapons to black niggers was like throwing money down the toilet. This old man has a knack for making people angry. Feel free to talk as much as you want. One day, I will make you scream for help from your mouths. It is said that a gentleman's revenge is never too late even after 10 years, so we must endure it now. I soothed my stomach with a Coke so cold it made my teeth hurt and focused on making plans for the future. For some time now, Italy will not have the energy to care about anything other than Ethiopia. While they're preoccupied with Ethiopia, we've got to do our thing. The enemies are coming. Upon hearing that the Italian army was coming, the Ethiopian soldiers who had been scattered and resting hurriedly entered the trenches. Everyone ready for battle. The rifle used by Ethiopian soldiers is the Ju-98, which was used by the German army during World War I, and was stored in a warehouse as a spare and sent to Ethiopia by Hitler's order. When I give the signal, you shoot. I will kill those who shoot before then with my own hands. When Sergeant Joseph Gangel of the German Wehrmacht shouted, his interpreter translated into Ethiopian and shouted, Gangel, one of the German military advisors dispatched to assist the Ethiopian army, wore an Ethiopian army uniform instead of a German Wehrmacht uniform to fool the Italians. Additionally, if captured, he was instructed by his superiors to state that he was an Austrian mercenary hired by the Ethiopian government. Before leaving for Ethiopia, Gangel met with the president and shook hands. The president shook hands with each of the advisors leaving for Ethiopia and wished them good luck. It's embarrassing that I sent him to death with my own hands and told him not to die. As a leader, I have nothing to say. Still, I hope everyone will fight hard. I will keep this in mind, Mr. President. Gangel put his finger on the trigger of the MP-28 submachine gun. Before we knew it, the Italian army was close to the range. Start shooting. When Gangel's signal was given, sparks flew out from all 60 guns. The Italian soldiers, who had been walking leisurely as if taking a walk, became confused when the Ethiopian army's attack began. Even the officers who were supposed to calm the soldiers and give orders were busy running away. Those pathetic bastards. Even so, they are descendants of Rome. Cavemen would fight better, you incompetent bastards. Gangel skillfully changed magazines with one hand. The precious MG08 machine guns, one mounted in each company, also fired heavily and knocked down the Italian troops. The weapons that had been firing against British and French troops in the mud of Belgium 20 years ago were now firing against Italian troops in the fields of Africa. It's a tank. It's a tank. When the Italian army's L3 tank had appeared, the Ethiopian army all shouted for tanks. Although it was categorized as a tank, in terms of performance alone, it was a tankette that was at a level that would be embarrassing to call it a tank. However, the Italian army, which did not have proper armored vehicles, was rolling them out in large quantities. Before the Breda M30 machine gun mounted on L3 opened fire, the Ethiopian army's tank Jabir opened fire first. This was also Germany's support to the Ethiopian army. The L3's armor, which was only 12 mm at its thickest point, was pierced like a sheet of paper. L3 stopped moving after being repeatedly hit by tank Dra's 13.2 mm bullets. The tank soldiers on board the vehicle ended their lives as miserable corpses with their limbs separated. Good job. Keep shooting. Gangel's words were drowned out by the noise of the battlefield, but the Ethiopian soldiers carried out their mission in silence. Another L3 was pierced through the front and was rendered incapable of combat. Like other Europeans, Gangel initially disliked the fact that he had to command inferior black people. Although I came to Ethiopia because of the president's order, I did not have much expectations about how well they would follow the training. But now my thoughts have changed a bit. Considering the lack of training days, the Ethiopian army was fighting much better than expected. The Italian army, which suffered significant damage from the fierce resistance of the Ethiopian army, requested support from the main unit. After a while, the Italian army hurriedly retreated, leaving behind the dead and the wreckage of the destroyed vehicles. The Ethiopian army, confident of victory, shouted hooray. However, before the shouts of national independence could end, the Italian army's shells fell. The shells dropped by the Italian army were different from existing shells. There was no explosion, and instead yellow gas came out. Damn it, it's poison gas. Gangel, who realized the identity of the shell, cursed and hurriedly took out a gas mask. Everyone wear gas masks. A German-made gas mask saved the life of an Ethiopian soldier. Without the gas masks, they would have been wiped out. Gangel got goosebumps. 20 minutes later, the Italian army attacked again. However, what was waiting for them was not the corpses of the Ethiopian soldiers, but the Ethiopian army's bullets. What? They're not dead yet? Fuck, those bastards are wearing gas masks too. Look. The screams of Italian soldiers rang out under a hail of bullets. I can't believe it. How could this happen? Marshal Rodolfo Graziani, governor of Italian Somaliland and commander-in-chief of the Italian forces in southeastern Ethiopia, was sweating profusely after receiving the report on the war situation. Uncivilized blacks repeatedly repel attacks by the Italian army, descendants of Rome. Even a poison gas attack did not have much effect because the Ethiopian army also had gas masks. Graziani became angry and hit the table. How do those niggers even have gas masks? The question was soon resolved. This is because Italian troops who were searching for the fallen Ethiopian troops captured the gas masks used by the Ethiopian troops and placed them in front of him. This is neither the British nor the French system. A chemical warfare officer said after examining the captured gas mask. Then what? It looks like it's made in Germany, Your Excellency. Made in Germany. Why are they using German-made gas masks? I'm not sure about that either. It was obvious. In the first place, how could an officer know something that even the enemy didn't know? There was something else suspicious. Among the weapons captured from the Ethiopian army, a particularly large proportion were German-made weapons. From German-made rifles to grenades, machine guns, and gas masks. All of this evidence pointed to only one thing. It's clearly the work of the Germans. Yes, Your Excellency. It's clear what they did. I will quickly inform the home country. Graziani was dumbfounded. No matter how much Germany doesn't get along with Italy, they support niggers to fuck us. Are you saying they aren't even white? General Emilio de Bono, commander-in-chief of the Eritrean army, also sent a similar report to his home country. They say the Ethiopian army is using German-made weapons and gas masks. Mr. President, a letter of protest has arrived from Italy. It's probably because we provided weapons to Ethiopia. I'll cover it up appropriately. As expected, Mussolini protested against the Ethiopian army's use of German-made weapons. Our strategy for this was stick out your flippers. It is true that the equipment being used by the Ethiopian military is German-made, but it has nothing to do with Germany since Ethiopia first expressed its intention to purchase it and sold it at the full price. Will Italians believe it? What if I don't believe it? Even if we openly sell weapons, they can't do anything. Unless you plan on going to war. Just leave it alone. Well, I see. I understand, Mr. President. Goebbels was relieved when he heard my answer, as if he had just had a blast. No matter what the Pasta guys do in Ethiopia, we just have to do our own thing. Have you received a reply from Dolphus? Yes. I am pleased with His Excellency the President's proposal and would like to meet him as soon as possible. Good, very good. According to history, Engelbert Dollfuss, Austria's chancellor and aspiring dictator, should have been assassinated on July 25, 1934. Those who assassinated Dollfuss were none other than members of the Austrian Nazi Party. They assassinated Dollfuss out of dissatisfaction with Dollfuss, who was negative about the merger of Germany and Austria and outlawed the activities of the Nazi Party. But now in history, he is still alive. This is because, as Führer, I instructed the Austrian Nazi Party members to fully cooperate with the Austrian government's orders, and they faithfully followed my orders. Thanks to this, Dollfuss was not assassinated, and his relationship with the Nazi Party was amicable. I proposed to him a summit to discuss cooperation between Germany and Austria, and Dollfuss also responded positively. At this meeting, we plan to have very frank and sound conversations. Things are going smoothly as planned. Chapter 22 I Can't Be Happy March 23, 1936 Nuremberg, Germany. It is a great honor to meet the Führer of Germany. Wow, you're saying all sorts of things. SS guards wearing black uniforms lined up on the left and right, while the Hakenkreuz flag and the Austrian flag flew. Dollfuss was really short. He was only 150 centimeters tall, so when he stood next to an SS man who was over 180 centimeters tall, he looked like an adult and a child. In order to shake hands with him, I had to bend down almost as if I was bowing. The soldiers are well disciplined. Indeed, the Führer's SS seems to be different. Haha, you say all kinds of things. Please go inside. The summit meeting with Dollfuss took place in a friendly atmosphere. For the Austrian delegation, I instructed them to display more Austrian flags than Hakenkreuz flags around Nuremberg, and the delegation seemed relieved to see the Austrian flags waving all over the city. We in Germany want a more developed and closer relationship with your country than before. I deliberately chose only words that Dollfuss would listen to. From praise for Dollfuss's achievements while Minister of Agriculture and Forestry to criticism of the Austrian communist organizations that Dollfuss recently defeated, to cooperation between Germany and Austria. The smile never left Dollfuss's face. It worked. We, Austria, also hope to continue our friendly relationship with Germany. After all, aren't our two countries brothers? That's right. I am now the Führer of Germany, but how can I forget Austria, my home country where I was born? As a result of the 2-hour meeting, Dollfuss agreed to a military alliance between Germany and Austria. As the meeting was coming to an end, he unexpectedly asked me a question. President, if you'll excuse me, may I ask you a question? Please tell me. What do you plan to do with Austria in the long term? It's really embarrassing to say this, but there are rumors going around in some parts of Austria that Germany is trying to annex Austria as a province of its own country. Of course, this is just a rumor, but the concern caused by this rumor is at a level that cannot be ignored. I would like to take this opportunity to hear the president's opinion. Since he doesn't say it out loud, it's practically like asking, aren't you planning on going to Austria later? Since Dollfuss himself argued that Austria should exist as a separate country from Germany, it would not be an exaggeration to say that this question was his own. You seem to be worried about everything. I don't know who is spreading such rumors, but I am the Führer of Germany. Austrian affairs should be left to the Austrian government, not the German government. No matter how close the two countries are, don't they have their own governments? My ultimate goal is only for Austria and Germany to form an alliance and maintain eternal friendly relations. Only then did Dollfuss seem to feel completely relieved. Okay. Thank you, President. Thank you for answering my rude questions with sincerity. Isn't that a natural thing? It's not another country, it's the country I was born in. After the meeting, a dinner was held. After the dinner, there was a weapons fair. The Austrian delegation, including Dollfuss, showed great interest in new German weapons. From the latest machine gun MG34 and the latest submachine guns MP35 and MP35 to Tank 1 and Tank 2. Oh, this is Germany's new tank. The Austrians, who had no domestically produced tanks at all, looked around at number 1 and number 2 and continued to exclaim in exclamation. It's not something to look at with such admiration. Airplanes were also a good sight to see. The R-65, a biplane, and Germany's current main fighter, the Bf-109, which is still under development, and the He-50, He-51, and HS-123 bombers that are currently in service. Dollfuss' eyes twinkled as he examined the aircraft. It's like the look in a child's eyes when they see a new toy on the supermarket shelf. I said without missing the opportunity. What do you think, Prime Minister? The things we, Germany, are proud of. That's amazing. I covet these things even more because they are not available in Austria. Dollfuss's words seemed sincere, not the usual lip service. The expression says it all. Imagine driving an M48 Patton or F4 Phantom and then suddenly seeing an M1 Abrams or F35 Lightning. I can't turn my eyes away if I don't want to. Now that Germany and Austria are allies, the Austrians will soon have these too. Is that true? Dollfuss asked with a smile. I nodded as if it was obvious. Aren't we allies now? Why would I lie? Austria's well-being is Germany's well-being, and Germany's well-being is Austria's well-being. I immediately promised on the spot that I would gift 1 Tank 1 and 2 Tank to Austria. The Austrian delegation was surprised by my words. Tank number 2, as well as Tank number 1, are new tanks whose mass production began less than 2 years ago. Of course, I couldn't help but widen my eyes at the idea that such a valuable weapon would be given away for free. Why are you so surprised? This is the level that can be given as a token of friendship. Thank you so much, Führer. I knew well that the Führer was an extraordinary person, but I had no idea that he was this person of such great stamina. The Austrian delegation returned with their mouths hanging open. There are plans to devour Austria in the future, but there are no immediate plans. Even in the last regression, it was 1940 when Austria was slowly boiled and made to request annexation on its own, so there is no need to be impatient. However, things in the world do not always go as planned. April 1, 1936 road between Leoben and Koppenberg, Austria. You seem to be in a good mood these days. Asked Kirchhoff, Minister of Education and Dollfuss's closest confidant. Dollfuss nodded his head. I can't help but feel bad. The talks with Germany were successful. Not only did he hear directly from Führer Hitler that he was not interested in the annexation of Austria, but he also received 2 precious new tanks as a gift. Although the details of the meeting, Hitler's response and other sensitive details, were not made known to the public, Dollfuss eagerly advertised that he received many gifts from Germany through this meeting. Aren't the 2 tanks given as a gift by Führer Hitler proof of this? The people were enthusiastic about the government's achievements, and Dollfuss's support naturally increased. Currently, the only organization in Austria that does not support Dollfuss is the Communist Party. I heard that yesterday in the capital, communists were caught distributing leaflets criticizing me. They are such disgusting people. Dollfuss grumbled. What Dollfuss was most passionate about after becoming chancellor was to beat down the Communist Party and various socialist organizations that had grown parasitic in Austria. To avoid the oppression of Dollfuss, the Communist Party went underground and is still continuing its activities secretly throughout Austria. Do not worry. With the Heimer working hard, communists will disappear from this country within 3 or 4 years. The National Defense Corps was a fascist-oriented paramilitary organization created by Dollfuss that served as the SS of Dollfuss and the Fatherland Front to which Dollfuss belonged. It was the National Guard that played a major role in suppressing the Austrian Popular Front during the Austrian Civil War 2 years ago. That's right. All communists who are a cancer in society must be killed. At that moment, an explosion occurred. Dollfuss didn't know what had happened to him. Just as he thought his body was floating, a tyranny tore it to pieces. What was once Dollfuss was broken into hundreds or thousands of large and small pieces of meat, which were stuck all over the equally mangled private car. Say it again. Yes, Mr. President. This is news I just heard. Prime Minister Dollfuss is said to have died in a terrorist attack. I have checked it again and again, and it is a clear fact. Huh? What on earth is going on? Dollfuss is dead. How long has it been since we met and talked? The news of Dollfuss's sudden assassination embarrassed not only Austria but also me. They ordered confirmation, wondering if the Austrian Nazi Party had committed it on their own, but the reply they received was that they had no idea. Well, they are the ones who unconditionally obey what I say, so there is no way they would do anything arbitrarily. There is a possibility that some radicals committed this and are unaware of it, but Heydrich also says that the possibility is low, so you can trust him. So who on earth killed Dollfuss? The identity of the culprit who assassinated Dollfuss was soon revealed. The culprit of the Dollfuss assassination was revealed to be the Austrian Communist Party. To be exact, the Austrian resistance organization that followed the instructions of the Communist Party was the real culprit who assassinated Dollfuss. In history, he died at the hands of the far-right Nazi Party, and now he died at the hands of the Communist Party. People are truly unlucky and unlucky. How did he die during the last regression? Yes, he died of a heart attack. Schuschnigg died in a car accident before Dollfuss. Dollfuss died on the spot, but Schuschnigg survived and became prime minister. However, Schuschnigg's condition was not very good. It is said that it is difficult for him to speak for more than 10 minutes because his left leg was blown off and his head was injured in the bombing. That friend won't last long either. Mr. President, maybe this is a heaven-sent opportunity. Göring said. Even Goebbels, who was not on good terms with Göring, agreed with Göring. That's right, Mr. President. If we use this incident well, we can turn things in a good direction for us. That's my opinion too. As they said, this may have been a bad thing for Dollfuss and his family, but not for Germany. Rather, it's the opposite. Dollfuss is a fascist, but he is also an Austrian independence activist who strongly opposes the unification of Austria and Germany. Now that Dollfuss is dead, future work will be much easier. Things seem to be getting better these days. Chapter 23 Tri-Emerger Schuschnigg, who suddenly became prime minister following the assassination of Dollfuss, was in increasingly poor health. Sensing that he had little time left, he chose his close friend, Arthur Seyss-Inquart, who had recently been appointed Minister of the Interior, as his successor. Thank you, Artie. Please lead this country well without me. Don't worry about that. Kurt, mind your own body first. May 3, 1936, Schuschnigg stepped down for health reasons and Inquart took over as Prime Minister. 3 days later, on May 6, Schuschnigg died. Upon Schuschnigg's death, Hitler issued a statement of condolence and ordered that flags be flown at half-staff throughout the country. Inquart, who became Prime Minister, immediately took action. May 10, 1936 Residence of the Führer in Berlin, Germany. Mr. President. I received a call from Inquart. Goebbels opened the door and rushed into the office. He was so excited that his face turned red. The corners of the mouth are just before reaching the ears. What did you say? They say they are requesting support from the Wehrmacht to solve security problems inside Austria. Right. I can't pretend not to see my younger brother asking for help as my older brother. At Inquart's request, I immediately ordered the Wehrmacht to move to Austria. The plan had already been made. May 11, 1936 German-Austrian border. Come on, let's go. As soon as the border barrier went up, the German Wehrmacht soldiers who had been waiting began marching straight into Austrian territory. Austrian army officers and soldiers shook hands with Wehrmacht soldiers, and reporters and the Wehrmacht film crew eagerly filmed the scene. The photos and videos they took were soon to be released to the German people and the world through newspapers and news films. Welcome, German brothers. Welcome to Austria. Austrians welcomed the Wehrmacht enthusiastically. Unlike the ruling Fatherland Front, most Austrians had the perception that they should unite with their brother country Germany, and happily accepted the German military's advances. While a military band played the German and Austrian national anthems, citizens threw confetti and flowers out of the windows. Children gave flowers to marching soldiers, women filled large jars with water so that thirsty soldiers could drink water, and those who fought in World War I wore old military uniforms. It was a scene that was happening all over Austria at the same time. This will make Hitler's arrogance even higher. Beck, who was staring with a sullen face at the Austrians welcoming the Wehrmacht and the soldiers cheering with flower necklaces around their necks, let out a sigh of relief. Cigarettes felt even more bitter today. That's right. The sky is so indifferent. How could a guy like that? Erwin von Wetzel-Eben, Beck's subordinate and one of the senior members of the Wehrmacht, also exhaled cigarette smoke helplessly. They maintained an almost neutral attitude toward Hitler and the Nazi Party until Hitler became Führer and declared the annulment of the Treaty of Versailles and the reinstatement of conscription. But when Hitler ordered the reoccupation of the Rhineland, they realized. Hitler is the man who will lead Germany to destruction again. The world's perception of Hitler is that he was a war hero who received the Iron Cross and a genius of the century who predicted the Great Depression and Japan's invasion of China, but in the eyes of military elders, including Beck and Witzel Eben, he was nothing more than a former sergeant who imitated Bismarck. During the Rhineland, things went as Hitler said, but no one knew whether his predictions would continue to be true in the future. It is by no means that the military despises Hitler and the Nazi Party because they are pacifists. They also actively supported Hitler's goal of recovering Germany's homeland. However, there is a difference of opinion regarding the method of implementation. Beck was convinced that Hitler's excessive speed and adventurism would destroy Germany in the future. If war breaks out now, Germany, which has not yet recovered its military power, will surely be defeated. But Hitler seems unaware of that fact. On the contrary, they look down on Britain and France too much and go on a rampage. This happened by chance, but good luck won't last. If that happens, war will definitely break out. That's right. Before that, we have to kill Hitler. But in the current atmosphere, it's going to be difficult. With the reoccupation of the Rhineland, public support for Hitler soared. Moreover, since Austria was also taken over, none of the people would want to oppose Hitler. If a coup was launched now, there was a very high possibility that the people would rise up. I have no choice but to quietly watch for a while. Beck threw the butts to the ground and trampled them with his military boots. He wanted to soothe his bitter stomach with a strong schnapps. Nice to meet you, everyone. It's really nice to meet you. With people cheering, I climbed onto the podium. Vienna, the capital of Austria, is also home to the National Academy of Fine Arts, which Hitler so desperately wanted to visit. While on the way to Vienna, the Austrians welcomed the soldiers enthusiastically, as if it were a festival. Even I, who lived in Korea in the 21st century and became Hitler overnight, was touched by the welcome from the residents. How did the real Hitler feel? I must have been in a bad mood. However, when World War II broke out, Austrians were conscripted into the German army and sent to the battlefield. Not only was the country devastated by war, but it was also divided and ruled by the Soviet Union and the Western Allies, including the United States and Britain, after the war. 10 years later, in 1955, it was unified as a permanent neutral country. In the past, a civil war broke out, and Italy and Czechoslovakia invaded. We managed to merge it with Germany, but then it fell into Italian hands due to civil war. This time, no matter what happens, we will make sure the same tragedy is not repeated. I stand here today with a trembling heart. I received your enthusiastic cheers and warm greetings before I came here. This was something I couldn't even imagine until a long time ago, when I left for Germany. Even this moment feels like a dream to me. When the revolution was first attempted in Munich, my dream was to unite my native Austria, where I was born and raised, with Great Germany. And now that dream has come true. Germany and Austria are no longer foreign countries. The two countries became one as of today. You will finally get to where you are meant to be. But this is not the end. This is only the beginning, and we still have a long way to go. But we will do it. Just as Austria is now united with Germany, we will continue to move forward and achieve what everyone said was impossible. Let us unite for one Germany, a great fatherland. Deutschland über alles. Wow. After the speech, the German national anthem came out of the speakers. Song of the Germans, Das Lied der Deutschen. Although the frequency of use decreased significantly after the war, it was a song that was never left out at large or small events during the Nazi Germany era. Germany reigns over the world, more than anything else in the world, standing together like brothers in defense from mast to memel, from edge to belt. Everyone, from children to the elderly, sang along like they were fascinated. It's a truly shocking sight. Is this what Gukpong is? Even after the German army entered Austria, the national identity of Austria was maintained. Wilhelm Mikres, who was a vain president, handed over his authority to Inquart and, through an agreement with Inquart, held a referendum asking the Austrian people about unification with Germany. Although the answer is already predetermined, formal procedures must still be followed. The result was 94% in favor and 6% against. Austria officially became part of Germany. Inquart, who made a decisive contribution to the merger, was awarded the title of honorary SS captain and became permanent minister. This time too, Britain and France remained silent. In the case of Italy, they deployed troops on the border, but that was it. They are busy with Ethiopian work anyway. Even in history, even after Italy occupied Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, it suffered from guerrilla warfare against the remnants of the Ethiopian army until early 1937. How much worse is it now? Even if they wanted to go to war, they would have no choice but to endure it because they could not afford it. I wonder what Mussolini's expression would be like right now. Damn it. Nothing is going right. Mussolini couldn't help but throw the vase on the floor. The vase with colorful flower decorations was shattered, and fresh flowers were scattered everywhere. The fact that Hitler, who was extremely wicked, provided weapons to black Ethiopians was all a paving stone for the annexation of Austria. A plan to make Italy bleed in Ethiopia and then devour Austria. In fact, this Austrian annexation was the result of a coincidence that was somewhat distant from Hitler's original plan, but there was no way Mussolini knew about it. Dollfuß's death is clearly the work of Hitler. He did this at the instigation of communists. Mussolini went wild like a madman over the fact that Austria, which was supposed to be part of Italy, was lost to rival Germany, but he also knew that this would not change reality. I just couldn't beat him. It felt like if I didn't do this, I would collapse with a vase. Mussolini, who had finally calmed down, shook his head. Since the German army has already entered Austrian territory, there is no other way than war to drive them out. However, the majority of the Italian army is on the Ethiopian front. On the other hand, if war breaks out, Germany can mobilize not only existing divisions but also the Austrian army. Mussolini did not believe that the Italian army was weaker than the German army, but he acknowledged that the situation was unfavorable for Italy. I have no choice but to move on quietly this time. Tell Hitler. What do you say, Duce? Instead of acquiescing to the annexation of Austria, we are told not to claim any sovereignty over the Tyrol region. If you ignore my warning, prepare for war. All right. Chapter 24 Between and Passion, 1, July 18, 1936. In the Second Spanish Republic, where the socialist-oriented Republican faction was in power, the far-right, anti-communist nationalist faction staged a coup. It was the beginning of the Spanish Civil War, which is considered a tutorial for World War II. Mussolini immediately declared support for the nationalists even though he was at war with Ethiopia. They haven't even recovered from the damage they suffered in Ethiopia, but they are giving it to others. Anyway, we have to admit that guy's bravado. Is it a bluff to overcome the flesh? Or is it a bluff to overcome the flesh? I also decided to dispatch troops and supplies to support the nationalists. Dispatching a military advisory group was essential to check the performance of existing weapons and to collect various data necessary for establishing military doctrine and training. They also ripped out mines and ports in Spain. General Sperl. Yes, Mr. President. I will only trust the general. Go and show the communists the power of the Germanic people. I will do my best. Major General Hugo Sperl of the Luftwaffe was selected as the commander of the German military advisory group Condor Corps, and Colonel Wolfram von Richthofen was selected as Sperl's chief of staff. In the army, Colonel Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma was selected as the commander of the Air Combat Group, an army combat unit belonging to the Condor Legion, and was sent to Spain. Before dispatching the Condor Corps, I argued with the upper echelons of the army. There was a difference of opinion on what equipment to send to Spain. Panzer No. 1 is enough, Mr. Führer. There is no need to send Panzer II. These damn junkers shouted loudly, saying that Tank No. 1 was enough to deal with the ragtag Spanish Republicans. It is said that the Republicans, who have a large number of factions but are in fact only at the level of a militia, will be busy running away even if a tank appears on the battlefield. Where are these guys talking shit? You know I'm from the future, but that's not true at all. It is true that the Republicans during the Spanish Civil War were largely ragtag. However, the equipment they operated could never be considered second class as of 1936. The T-26 and BT-5 light tanks supported by the Soviet Union were overwhelmingly superior to the German-made first tank and Italian-made L-3 tankettes used by the nationalists, so the nationalist tanks were often helplessly destroyed when Soviet-made tanks appeared. The machine gun mounted on Tank No. 1 could not destroy enemy tanks, so it was urgently modified to include an Italian-made Breda 20mm machine gun, but it was only a temporary measure and proper combat was virtually impossible. It was so bad that the nationalists actively encouraged the capture of enemy tanks, saying they would pay a reward to any soldier who captured a Soviet-made tank. The No. 1 tank cannot be used because its armament is too poor. Do you think you can destroy enemy positions or tanks with a machine gun? They say we have to send Panzer II. Therefore, out of consideration for the safety of the Condor Legion tankers, I argued that the second tank, which was more powerful than the first tank, should be sent. Lutz and Guderian also supported my argument, saying that Panzer II should be sent rather than Panzer I, and in the end, a compromise was reached to send both Panzer I and Panzer II, but only a small amount of Panzer I. Okay, I'll skip it this time. Anyway, I will soon be proven right. Another big event of the year following the Spanish Civil War was the Berlin Olympics. The first and last Olympics held in Germany under Nazi rule. In fact, both Hitler and I had a negative stance on hosting the Olympics. It's not that I'm originally not that interested in sports games. It costs too much money to host the Olympics. I was in the position of using the money from the Olympics to make more weapons, but surprisingly, there was extreme opposition from those around me. Göring, Goebbels, and even Himmler, who I thought had no interest in this field, were fiercely opposed to my opinion. Mr. President, if we give up on hosting something we decided to do in 1930 due to cost, it will be a worldwide laughingstock. You're right. And the Olympics are also a great opportunity to promote the greatness of the Aryan people to the world. It must be held. Okay. In the end, the Olympics were held on August 1, 1936, as history had it. With tourists, athletes, and reporters from all over the world watching, I recited the Olympic opening speech written by Goebbels. Fair competition awakens the best qualities that lie dormant in the human body. It unites athletes with one another in understanding, respect and the spirit of sport. It also helps to unite nations in the spirit of peace. That is why the Olympic flame must not die. I feel this every time, but Goebbels, this man, his writing skills are also amazing. After the opening speech, the Olympics began in earnest. Although I wanted to lie down on the soft bed and take a nap, I couldn't leave because I was the head of state of the country hosting the Olympics. Unlike me, who was looking at the stadium with blank eyes, the executives around me looked as excited as children. Well, unlike the 21st century, where there was endless content to enjoy such as the internet, TV, and cartoons, the Olympics would have been a huge spectacle in the 20th century, when entertainment was not very developed. It was a time when not every home had a computer, let alone a television. Wait, it's the Olympics that have been held for a long time, so I don't know if I'll even be able to see that person. Looking everywhere, all I could see were the hooked cross flags that the Germans called Hakenkreuz. If the people back home had seen this scene, they would have asked whether Germany is a country that believes in Buddhism. Western nosy people must have been surprised and asked if they knew the teachings of Buddha. Sun Qijing, a 24-year-old colonial youth, walked away with a bitter heart. His best friend Nam Soo-young, who followed in his footsteps, also could not hide the sorrowful expression on his face. When qualification for the Olympics was first confirmed, if only I had realized that this moment would come. Kijang, I still really envy you. What do you mean by that? You could at least cover your chest with saplings, but I had nothing. Sun Qijing, who won the gold medal, was given a sapling, which he used to cover the Japanese flag on his chest. However, Nam Soo-young, who won the bronze medal, did not. German people are also very stingy. If possible, it would be great if everyone in first, second, and third place received a seedling. It wouldn't be that expensive. Isn't that right? That's right. Of course, they knew full well that the reason for giving seedlings only to gold medal winners was not to save on the cost of the seedlings. Still, I couldn't help but feel some regret. The athletes, who had already finished their games, were free from the pressure that was weighing on their shoulders and were busy wandering around the city of Berlin and enjoying sightseeing, another attraction of the Olympics. Sun Qijing and Nam Soo-young, who won gold and bronze medals respectively, were fully qualified to tour downtown Berlin, but they had no intention of doing so. If the flag on their uniforms had not been the Japanese flag, they would have happily toured the German capital, but at this moment, they were nothing more than colonial youth. At least that's what they thought of themselves. The Japanese embassy offered to hold a celebration to commemorate their Olympic victory, but the two politely declined. Until I arrived in Berlin, I was sarcastic and asked why it was Koreans and not Japanese, but my attitude changed when I won. Instead, they headed to a small tofu factory in Berlin. The owner of the tofu factory was An Young-jun's cousin, An Bong-jun, who came to Germany to study, married a German woman, and lived in Berlin running a tofu factory. The workers at the tofu factory were all Koreans. Makgeolli, tofu, and kimchi were served at the celebration. It was far from a fancy dinner, but I didn't feel disappointed. Although his body was far away from his homeland in Germany, his heart seemed to be at home. And the next day, something unimaginable happened to them. Who are you talking about? Führer Hitler wants to see you. Not only Sun Qijing and Nam Soo-young, but even the Japanese interpreter Tom Moore looked dumbfounded. It was so unexpected that I could hardly turn my head. Who wants to meet us? The German Führer. Really? Well, is that true? Nam Soo-young couldn't even express how surprised he was. Tom Moore nodded her head. Okay. He also wants to see it as soon as possible. There is a car sent by the Führer outside the dormitory right now. Tom Moore also revealed that the president wanted to meet quietly without telling anyone. It was hard to believe. The German Führer us. Even if we say that it is gold medalist Sun Qijing, what about bronze medalist Nam Soo-young? The two still looked at each other's faces, wondering if this was a dream or reality. Hurry. Quickly change your clothes. The two changed into the best clothes they had brought and followed Tom Moore out of the dorm. Indeed, a car sent by Führer Hitler was waiting for them. It was a luxury car that was very rare not only in Joseon but also in Japan. Only the governor of Joseon or the royal family could ride in a car. Sun Kijang still doubted whether he was dreaming. However, the soft feel of the sheet against my palm was real. Is there a dream this vivid? The SS driver behind the wheel set off for the Führer's residence as soon as all the guests got into the car. You came. Heroes of Asia. I never thought the day would come when I would meet both Sun Kijang and Nam Soo-young. From remark to Guderian, I've already met people from history books, so there's nothing new there, but it was even more exciting because it was the first Korean I met since I became possessed by Hitler. They have no idea that I am actually from the same country from the future. Nice to meet you, Mr. Sun Kijang. I first approached with a bright face and offered Sun Kijang's hand. Sun Kijang took the hand I held out with a puzzled look on his face. Nice to meet you, Mr. President. The interpreter next to me translated what I said into Japanese and told it to Sun Kijang, and then translated what Sun Kijang said into German and told it to me. I could understand it without an interpreter, but I left it alone. Because there is no way that the German Führer knows Korean. Ah, you are Nam Soo-young. Nice to meet you. It is an honor, Mr. President. Nam Soo-young also held my hand, half trembling. How do you know our names? Sun Kijang said. They would have never dreamed that someone as high as the German Führer would know their names. It was even more questionable because the name called when going to receive the medal was a Japanese name, not a Korean real name. That's because I'm from the same country as you. I couldn't say anything and had to cover it up with a plausible excuse. If you become the German Führer, you can learn a lot. He can quickly find out what your real name is, where he was born and how he grew up. I made this up on the spot, but they were surprised that they really believed me. The interpreter was also so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. Actually, it's false. However, it is impossible to know the real names and family history of young people in the Far East overnight. There's no need to do that in the first place. Let's get over the trivialities. Anyway, I sincerely congratulate Sun Kijang on winning the Olympics. I also congratulate Nam Soo-young. Thank you. You really did a great job. Even I, who don't know anything about sports, know that running a marathon isn't usually difficult. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to wake up even if I were dead. That is too much praise. If you have a strong will like the president, you will be able to do it. Sun Kijang said. Nam Soo-young had a blank face, as if he still couldn't believe this moment. The interpreter looked very surprised, but he did not stop interpreting. He is a man with a strong professional spirit. What do you plan to do now when you return to Korea? I think we'll probably just keep doing the same thing. Right. Well, a marathon runner should keep running the marathon. Isn't that right, Teacher Nam? Of course. Really? Have you both eaten? Yes. Not yet. We have precious guests from the Far East, so we can't send them away on an empty stomach. Let's go eat. Chapter 25 Between and Passion, 2. I'm not sure if it will suit your taste, but please enjoy it to your heart's content. Then, let's toast. 4 wine glasses hit the air and made a clean and clear sound. For Sun Kijang and Nam Soo-young, who had only ever drank soju, makgeolli, or at most Saikor beer, this was their first time tasting wine. The two young Koreans could not believe the sight that unfolded before their eyes. There was a banquet that I had never received before, either in my hometown nor in Japan. We couldn't find many of the foods they enjoyed eating in their hometown, so we had no choice but to serve German dishes. But let's at least try it. Oh, yes. Thank you, President. Sun Kijang hesitated and took the large piece of meat in front of him with his fork and took it to his plate. The surface was crispy, but the inside was soft and chewy, giving it a unique taste. The downside was that it was a little greasy, so I couldn't eat much, but it was still delicious enough. It looks like pork. What's its name? It's called Schwanz, it's German cuisine. Tom Mora quietly informed me. In fact, Tom Mora had only seen this dish in books, but it was his first time actually eating it. For the two young men who, due to their poor circumstances, could not even eat rice, much less meat, a dinner full of meat was truly a new world. I thought I would only be able to enjoy a dinner like this when I died and went to paradise, but I got to taste it while I was alive. Try the sausage too. German sausages are known all over the world. Oh, thank you. There were so many types of food that if you were hesitating about what to eat, Führer Hitler would hint and suggest various things. Each time, the two young men stuffed their mouths full of food. Sausage is a common food in 21st century Korea, but in colonial Joseon in 1936, sausage was a very unfamiliar food. Most of them were foreign dishes that I had never seen before, but there were also dishes that were unexpectedly familiar. Isn't his tofu and kimchi? We airlifted to collect you too. The tofu and kimchi that I ate with my compatriots at the factory yesterday were laid out. Sun Kijang could not hide his curiosity. He had no idea that this was sourced from the factory they had visited yesterday. There was another delicious food. It was chicken boiled in a pot, and it looked perfectly cooked. Nam Suryong asked in surprise. Do German people also eat white boiled rice? Tom Mora interpreted and told Hitler that bksuk, which Nam Suryong had mentioned, was boiled chicken eaten only in Korea. Hitler shook his head. No. I prepared this for you too. How did you know bksuk? Well, I'll leave it to your imagination. In reality, it was boiled in water with garlic, salt, pepper, bay leaves, and raw chicken, but there was no significant difference in taste. As time passed, Sun Kijang and Nam Suryong's doubts grew. What kind of person was the German Führer who prepared all this food? There is no way Germans would enjoy Korean food, so is it really prepared for them? So much in such a short amount of time? President, if you don't mind, may I ask you something? Please speak. Did all the gold medal winners have dinner with the president like this? No. You guys are the first. Why are you treating us so well? We are not Germans, we are just Koreans. The reason is simple. Because you showed me your will. Even though you were born in another country's colony, you achieved victory through your own efforts, beating all other strong competitors. If there is such a person, shouldn't we meet him? After finishing the meal and having coffee and cake for dessert, I said goodbye to my two compatriots. The two people seemed genuinely touched by the kindness I showed them. It is touching to see such generous support from a country that has nothing to do with them. Lastly, I provided a private car for them and even took them on a tour of Berlin. This is the real full course. It's not just a superficial Busan full course. Before leaving, I asked everyone to keep my meeting a secret until I arrived home after the Olympics. I added an explanation that my position would be difficult if it became known that I had met with Olympic athletes in private. Don't worry, Mr. Führer. I will definitely keep your secret. I will never forget today even after I die. Go carefully. Let's meet again if we get a chance. Sun Kijang, who returned to Joseon after the Berlin Olympics, did not receive the treatment he deserved despite being an Olympic gold medalist. Wary of his rapidly growing popularity among the Korean people, Japan tied Sun Kijang up with a rope and transported him as if he were a criminal, and followed him until liberation, monitoring his every move. In the case of Nam Suryong, he was not under as much scrutiny as Sun Kijang, but he did not receive much attention from the public because he was a bronze medalist. When I think about the hardships they will go through when they return to Joseon, I feel mixed emotions. I just hope that the treatment I received today becomes a memory and helps me overcome the difficult days ahead. In addition to Sun Kijang and Nam Suryong, there was one more foreign player that I met separately. That's Jesse Owens. He is a black American track and field athlete famous for winning a gold medal at the Berlin Olympics. It is known to the public that when Owens won the gold medal, Hitler was displeased and walked out, but in reality it was quite the opposite. In fact, while Hitler waved and congratulated Owens, U.S. President Roosevelt did not even mention him, let alone meet him. I think this will turn out well as a picture. You must be Jesse Owens. I've heard rumors for a while and wanted to meet you, and it's an honor to meet you like this. Thank you, Mr. President. I am also honored to meet the President. Owens looked as dazed as Sun Kijang and Nam Suryong in front of him. The Germanic people would have never dreamed that the person who claimed to be the best in the world would want to meet not only someone else but a black person themselves. I heard you've been through a lot. I heard that even though you are an American citizen, you are not allowed to use restaurants or restrooms as you wish. So do all black people in America, Mr. President. It's such a strange thing. Decades have passed since Lincoln freed black slaves, but discrimination still exists. Well, even we in Germany are not free from discrimination. This is a very unfortunate thing. I had no idea that the president had such a broad perspective. Owen seemed to have a hard time telling whether what I said was genuine or lip service. However, he soon realized that there was no way I would invite him, a black man, here just to pay lip service, and his face became filled with emotion. If all Americans were half as good as the president, the word discrimination would not exist in the world. Excessive praise. Actually, I'm not that broad-minded person either. It's just that I don't like discriminating against people based on skin color, etc. That is enough. There are so many people in the world whose skin color is everything. Owens complained about the numerous discrimination and contempt he had faced because he was black and the treatment black people received in the United States. I guess I've accumulated a lot of words from constantly pouring out words like a fish out of water. I listened to what he had to say until the end, chiming in with me from time to time. After the Olympics, I will return to the United States. But now that you've won a gold medal at the Olympics, won't the way people view you change a little? I hope so, but I'm not sure. Even if I am a gold medalist, People will think that I am black first. Mr. President, I don't quite understand. Was there any reason for you to have a meal with him? This was what Himmler said the evening he had dinner with Jesse Owens. Yeah, you knew that. It's so expected that it's not surprising. Owens, isn't he a black man, not even a Germanic one? Yes. That's why I met him. Yes. No, you met him because he was black? Why? Even Goering, who had been silent, came forward and raised questions. It seems like you have no idea what my intentions are. Think about it carefully. The way black people are treated in America. It's not that good, is it? But isn't there a country where black people are treated well other than the one founded by black people? Goebbels' point. That is correct. Other than countries like Haiti or Liberia where the overwhelming majority of people are black, there are few countries where black people are treated as human beings. Yes. But the United States is the world's greatest power. Even in such a powerful country, discrimination against black people is very natural. Isn't that the same in Germany? That's right. But there aren't many black people in Germany. Think about it. In America, where many black people live, the treatment that Jesse Owens deserves. He might win a gold medal, but to most Americans he's just a nigger. That fact doesn't change no matter what you win, including the gold medal. What would people think if a black person, who was despised even in his native country, was treated extremely well in Germany? Specifically, black people in America. You will be disappointed in your country. In return, Germany's status will rise. As it did in the Great War, the United States will interfere to prevent Germany from gaining hegemony in Europe. Wouldn't it be beneficial to us if we incited black people in America at that time? As I have repeatedly emphasized before, what is important now as well as in the distant future is cause and image. There are countless cases where a war that could have been won was lost due to the absence or lack of this, and conversely, a country that was almost destroyed was revived. That's what I said, but I know that the plan to incite black people in America and cause trouble is not very realistic. Above all, I plan to avoid war with the United States at all costs. A war with the United States itself is practically a defeat, so would you be crazy enough to go to war? There are only a handful of countries that survived or won a war with the United States, including North Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. Fortunately, North Korea managed to survive thanks to the passive attitude of the United States, which was concerned about an all-out war with China and the Soviet Union, and Vietnam also did not escalate the war due to concerns about an all-out war with the Soviet Union. In the case of Afghanistan, the United States, unable to withstand the burden of war costs, gave up and withdrew, resulting in victory. Considering the time and damage it took to win the war, it cannot be called a complete victory. On the other hand, Japan, which had really enraged the United States with its attack on Pearl Harbor, suffered a miserable fall after its entire mainland was literally reduced to a sea of fire. Not to mention Germany and Italy, which were on the same side as Japan. Still, the fact that I met Jesse Owens and treated him well will instill a friendly perception of Germany among black Americans, which will be useful in the future when relations between the United States and Germany deteriorate. Mr. President, with all due respect, I don't think your plan is very realistic. Even if our agitation works and black people start a riot, won't it be suppressed quickly? Heydrich said. I nodded obediently. I don't think my plan is very realistic either. Rather than thinking of it as a thorough plan, it should be seen as just a tip-off just in case. If you can change the perception of the people of the other country in just a few hours, wouldn't there be a more lucrative business? But if it were known that you had a meal with a black man, wouldn't your prestige be harmed? It doesn't matter. I've already heard of being called an honorary Chinese. I don't care at all if people who hate me call me an honorary black man. No matter what I do, they are the ones who will try to find fault with me in some way. Heydrich could no longer argue with what I said. Even when he heard it, he thought it sounded plausible. The Olympics concluded without a hitch as scheduled. Sun Qijing and Nam Soo-young, who returned to Joseon, came under strict surveillance by the Japanese police due to their increased popularity. In the case of Jesse Owens, despite being an Olympic gold medalist, he was completely ignored by the U.S. government. Although all gold medalists were invited to the White House, he, who was black, was an exception. After the Olympics, the world's attention focused on Spain again. France, Mexico, and the Soviet Union supported the Spanish Republicans, and Italy, Germany, and Portugal supported the nationalists, so the Spanish Civil War began to take on the aspect of a kind of proxy war. There's an enemy tank in front. Fuck. Everyone scatter. Mom. Mommy. On the front lines, gunfire and screams continued day after day. The hell where blood was splattered and people were crushed and buried in the dirt was being recreated in Spain. Chapter 26 Baking 1. The weapons provided to the nationalists by the Condor Corps that arrived in Spain were renowned for their excellent German-made performance. However, not all weapons received the same reviews. Enemy tanks appear. Shit, it's a T-26. Driver back up. No, move forward. He is coming this way. The first tanks, which were running across the front line, fell into panic when a large number of Republican T-26 tanks appeared. Some brave tanks attempted to attack, but there was no way they could penetrate the tank's armor with machine guns or anything like that. Flames soon spewed out from the muzzle of the T-26, which was moving forward, easily deflecting bullets. Tank number 1, hit by the T-26's 45mm tank gun, became a ball of fire and came to a halt. The tank commander and driver died instantly without any chance of escape. Car 3 was hit. Damn it, how can you beat that guy? The T-26's armor was weak, only 15mm at its thickest point, but it was able to easily protect against machine guns. Above all, the 45mm 20K tank gun mounted on the turret boasted powerful power, capable of penetrating the frontal armor of the German army's first and second tanks with one shot at the standard engagement distance. Fighting the T-26 with Panzer I was as reckless as hitting a rock with an egg. The fascists are running away. Keep shooting. Don't let those pigs escape. The Republican tankers fired shells leisurely, laughing at the enemies who were busy running away like rabbits that encountered a tiger. Sniping retreating enemy tanks was as easy as duck hunting. Bullets rained down on the nationalist tank crew, who was hurriedly escaping from the tank with his entire body engulfed in flames. The tank soldier who opened the hatch and came out was hit by countless bullets and fell into the street tank. Soon, tank number 1 was completely engulfed in flames and burst into flames, meaningless with the word immortal written in Spanish on its side. While 2 platoons of tank number 1 were annihilated, the only damage suffered by the Republicans was 1 tank stopped due to engine failure. The battle ended in a complete victory for the Republicans. The next day, the Republicans, encouraged by yesterday's victory, decided to launch a counterattack. The goal is to recapture the high ground near the village that fell into the hands of the nationalists a week ago. T-26 and BT-5 took the lead in the attack, and soldiers with weapons advanced behind the tanks. The soldiers mobilized for this offensive were amateurs with no combat experience and had only fired a few live rounds during training, but thanks to the presence of Soviet-made tanks, their morale soared. There was nothing to fear with these steel monsters. Those fascist bastards, when they see us, they're going to freak out, right? I might poop my pants. Let's finish this quickly and have some food. An incredibly relaxed attitude for soldiers about to go into battle. Rather than worrying about being killed or injured, the Republican soldiers' main concern was what to do with the captured enemies. All fascists must be killed. They are not worth keeping alive. There is no need to kill them all. Shouldn't we leave behind someone to clean the bathroom? Zerat, do you think I don't know that you are in charge of cleaning the bathroom this week? You should kill at least 3 of them as an example. When one of the female soldiers who took part in this attack said that they would pull down the pants of the prisoners and kick them out, laughter poured out from left and right. Then, suddenly, the attack began. I thought I could hear the sharp sound of metal colliding with steel, and then the T-26, which had been rattling and rolling in the lead, was suddenly engulfed in flames. A tanker with his right leg cut off crawled out of the hatch screaming, and countless bullets rained down on him. It's a surprise attack. Get down. The Republican soldiers, who had been laughing and chatting just a moment ago, fell like leaves in a cold wind due to the sudden surprise attack of the nationalists. The soldiers who were lucky enough to bow down in time survived, but those who were slow to move were already turned into hives and collapsed. A female soldier who was shouting that she would kick the prisoners out of their misfortune also fell with a bullet lodged in her temple. The Kar 98K and MG-34 provided by Germany opened fire in succession, and the Pak-36 anti-tank gun fired shells. The T-26, which could easily deflect bullets but could not protect against weapons that went beyond that, was destroyed by a single 37mm armor-piercing round. Unlike the T-26, even the BT-5, which had a sloping front, was powerless in front of German anti-tank guns. 2 tanks had already been destroyed and were burning brightly. T-26 at 11 o'clock. Distance 400, fire. While the nationalist soldiers fired hard, the Wehrmacht soldiers of the Condor Legion operated anti-tank guns and destroyed the Republican tanks one by one. Thanks to thorough camouflage, the Republicans could not even figure out where the shells were coming from. Zerat. Zerat. Damn it, Zerat is dead. Mom. Dad. Help me. Fire back. Fuck it, fire back. Nationalist tanks rushed toward the confused Republicans. The tank soldiers, who were preparing to avenge yesterday, fired bullets indiscriminately at all visible enemies. Fernando, turn the turret. The enemy is on the left. Where are you? 2 o'clock. Hurry. Raoul, load your armor-piercing rounds. All right. One T-26 was destroyed after being hit by an armor-piercing shell flying in from the front as it hurriedly turned its turret. Another T-26 next to it was destroyed under heavy fire from Tank 2's 20mm cannon. Smoke leaked out from the hole that the cannonball had passed through. Republican tanks also counterattacked and hit Tank number 2. Because he was hit at the bottom of the hull, the driver was killed, and only the tank commander and ammunition operator survived. A BT-5 attacked Tank 2 first, but because it aimed for the track, it was counterattacked by a 20mm cannon and destroyed. When all their tanks were destroyed, the Republicans cancelled their attack plan and retreated. However, there was no way the hunter would release the game he had caught so long ago. Tanks 1 and 2 pursued the fleeing Republicans and fired until they ran out of ammunition. The field where the battle ended was full of corpses that were cut into pieces and had holes in them. The acrid smell of gunpowder, blood, and burning flesh made my nose rot. Flies and crows gathered after smelling the corpse's blood. Wherever a battle took place, they would always appear and fill their stomachs by tearing at the flesh of the corpses and drinking the blood that pooled on the ground. The smell of death lingered long after the corpse's flesh had rotted away and only the white bones remained. TSK, TSK, TSK. I knew it would end up like this. The reports regularly sent by the Condor Legion fighting in Spain were full of valuable information. As expected, Tank number 1 was not of much help on the battlefield. It was better than nothing. But when something that was supposed to be used only for reconnaissance was proudly sent to the front line, it was often defeated by the Soviet-made T-26 and BT-5. In the case of Tank number 2, although it was much more useful than Tank number 1, the majority opinion was that it was impossible to fight one with Soviet-made tanks. Among the tanks owned by the nationalists, there was no tank that could protect against the 20mm cannon of the number 2 tank from the front, so its firepower could be said to be not bad. But it had the disadvantage that it was difficult to suppress the enemy position with one shot due to the lack of a tank gun. In addition, its armor was thicker than that of Tank 1, but it was equally powerless against the 45mm tank gun. Do you have anything to say? If you have any objections, please speak up at any time. The generals who had been shouting that Tank number 1 alone was sufficient immediately burrowed when I showed them the report on the Condor Corps. If you made a lame excuse, I was planning to brush it off like a dog, but you at least have some sense. Do you know what Colonel Thomas wrote? He wrote, the most powerful tanks our military currently has are the T-26 and BT-5 tanks made by the Russians. What did you guys say to me before? Didn't you say that there was no need to send Panzer number 2 because Tank number 1 was sufficient? Sorry. We were short thinking. Seeing the guys who used to make a fuss about being generals now calm down, I feel like my heart is being purified. They must be embarrassed to have been proven wrong after frequently shouting opposition. Well, I guess I'll just leave it at that and do my job. Since this is a result obtained with the blood of soldiers, it should not be used vainly. Wouldn't that be the only way to have the dignity to look at the dead soldiers? Not only the 1st Panzer, but also the 2nd Panzer has been proven to be weak, so the only thing left for us is to focus all our efforts on developing the 4th Panzer. Until 1939 at the latest, Panzer No. 4 should be the main force, and Panzer No. 1 and No. 2 should be moved to the rear or second-tier tanks. Please keep my words in mind. A more powerful, high-performance weapon was needed. To do that, I still needed money. Spending money recklessly won't solve everything, but without money, nothing can be done. That's how precious money really is. I found the answer in China. China's Chiang Kai-shek regime, which had established military cooperation with the Soviet Union until 1927, ended its relationship with the Soviet Union due to the collapse of the Chinese Communist Party and the Guangxi riots caused by the Chinese Communist Party, and was looking for a new partner for cooperation. The new cooperation target that Chiang Kai-shek paid attention to was Germany. In 1928, German-Chinese military cooperation began when Ludendorff's most trusted advisor, Colonel Max Bauer, who had served as a military advisor in many countries around the world, led a military advisory group to China. However, when Bauer died of smallpox in 1929, Hermann Kriebel, a reserve lieutenant colonel and senior member of the Nazi Party who had participated in the Beer Hall Putsch, took over as acting head of the advisory group. He soon gave up his position to Lieutenant General Georg Wetzel and returned to Germany. Next to Wetzel was Hans von Seeckt, one of Germany's greatest generals. However, Seeck's health deteriorated and he returned to his home country in 1935, and as of 1936, the head of the German military advisory group in China was Alexander von Falkenhausen. For reference, Kriebel went to China again 2 years ago and is serving as German Consul General in Shanghai and head of the Nazi Party's Far East branch. Thus, the relationship between Germany and China was very amicable. However, the Sino-Japanese War began, and Hitler, seeing the Japanese army continuing its winning streak, decided to join hands with Japan instead of China, breaking up the German-Chinese relationship. Historians estimate that history would have been very different if Hitler had not broken off with China. If Germany had maintained friendly relations with China instead of Japan, it would not have followed Japan's lead in attacking Pearl Harbor and declared war on the United States, and the United States would not have intervened in the war in Europe. Although there are no ifs in history, it is a very interesting assumption. Knowing that Japan will wage war against Britain and the United States in the future, I plan to maintain friendly relations with China for a long time. Above all, China is a country that purchased a significant amount of weapons from Germany and exported resources to Germany until relations with Germany deteriorated. Thanks to China, Germany was able to not only make good profits but also stockpile various resources essential for the war effort. Sell weapons to make money and get the resources you need. Isn't his killing two birds with one stone? By the way, what day is today? It's November 22nd. Soon, the incident will occur in China. I guess I'll have to talk to Chiang Kai-shek soon. Chapter 27 Baking 2, November 26, 1936 Presidential Office, Nanjing, China. Welcome. It feels like it's been a long time since I last saw you. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. President. Chiang Kai-shek smiled brightly and welcomed German Consul General Hermann Kriebel. Originally, Oskar Trautmann, the German ambassador to China, was scheduled to meet Chiang Kai-shek, but Trautmann suddenly became ill, so Kriebel met Chiang Kai-shek instead. The two weren't close friends, but that didn't mean their relationship was bad. Chiang Kai-shek, who met Kriebel for the first time in 1928 and was acquainted with him, held a grand welcome party for Kriebel, whom he had not seen in a long time. The two left and talked about various things until the end of the party. A story about his hometown, a new personal hobby he recently developed, a complaint that his wife's scratching is getting worse and it's bothering him, etc. The real conversation started after the party ended. I heard that Führer Hitler had something important to tell me. Is this true? That's right. Although there has been a friendly relationship with Germany for a long time, there was no particular contact with Führer Hitler. Did you read Mein Kampf at the recommendation of Sun Yat-sen and send a congratulatory telegram to Hitler when he was appointed Chancellor? But suddenly I have something urgent to tell you. Did something happen? Your Excellency, let me tell you straight. Please listen to the end. I understand. Kriebel hesitated and opened his mouth. Your Excellency, Zhang Zuoliang and Yang Huqing have been captured by the Communist Party and are planning to imprison you. Chiang Kai-shek put down the teacup he was bringing to his mouth. Is that true? Or rather, where did you hear that news? His Excellency the Führer in Germany informed me. You did not reveal where the news came from, but you said that this news should be immediately reported to President Chiang Kai-shek and the two should be arrested. A few days ago, Dai Li, Chiang Kai-shek's most trusted subordinate and a leader of the Southern Doctors, suggested to Chiang Kai-shek that Zhang Zuoliang and Yang Huqing should be arrested and interrogated because they were in secret with the Communist Party. However, Chiang Kai-shek thought that Dai Li was overreacting and ignored his words. We know that Zhang Zuoliang and Yang Huqing showed weakness during the recent first attack operation and did not obey orders unconditionally. Anyway, it's treason. Chiang Kai-shek thought that could not be possible. However, when the same news came to Germany's Hitler, Chiang Kai-shek's confidence began to waver. I don't know how he obtained the information, but I have an idea. I guess I got it from an FBR agent somewhere in China. The person connected to that agent must be Zhang Zuoliang or one of Yang Huqing's subordinates. The important thing was that Hitler said the same thing as Derry, who was Hitler's Führer. Wasn't he a giant who not only made China's potential known to the world through Mein Kampf, but also predicted the Great Depression and Japan's invasion of Manchuria? In addition, he even showed his resourcefulness by taking over the Rhineland and Austria without firing a single gun. For this reason, Hitler was regarded as a kind of prophet not only in Germany but also around the world. Since that is what Hitler said, it is probably because there is such evidence. However, Chiang Kai-shek still harbored some doubts. Do you have any proof that that is true? I don't have any. However, the president knew that His Excellency would doubt his true intentions, so he left these words. Soon, Zhang Zuoliang will ask His Excellency to visit Zen in person, and he must never go to Zen. At the same time, he said that if those two were left alone, a great disaster would befall all of China. Is that what you said? Chiang Kai-shek closed his mouth and thought for a while. At this point, those two guys might really be up to something. Otherwise, there would be no way for Derry and Führer Hitler to say the same thing in succession. Unless the two met and planned some kind of plan. I understand. Think about it. The president said that the sooner Your Excellency makes a decision, the more the future of China will change. Right. I have one more question. Why did Führer Hitler tell me this news? The president said that only Your Excellency can take responsibility for China, and that China and Germany must maintain good relations for a long time. The corners of Chiang Kai-shek's mouth went up without realizing it. I never thought that Führer Hitler would look at me like that. This is truly an honor. Praise makes even whales dance, and there is no one who would be offended by a compliment. There is nothing more satisfying than receiving praise from someone you admire. After Kribel returned, Chiang Kai-shek called Dai Li. You were right. I just met with the German consul Kribel, and he said exactly what you said before. Führer Hitler informed me. Derry couldn't help but be surprised. Did Germany's Führer Hitler also know about the betrayal of Zhang Zuiliang and Yang Huqing? By what means? No. That's not what's important. There was something else to do now. Mr. Chairman, we must arrest Zhang Zuiliang and Yang Huqing immediately. Even at this moment, those two guys might be planning something. I understand. But before that, I want to speak to Zhang Zuiliang. When Chiang Kai-shek called, Zhang Zuiliang had just laid down on the bed. When Zhang Zuiliang heard that there was a phone call from Nanjing, he ran barefoot. President Zhang called me? Suddenly. Sorry for being late, Chairman. This is Zhang Zuiliang. It's time to fly. Zhang Zuiliang, I hear you have a lot to say to me. Zhang Zuiliang, who had been fooled by the Communist Party's propaganda, had previously advised Chiang Kai-shek that he should stop suppressing the Communist Party and cooperate with the Communist Party to deal with Japan first. Each time, Chiang Kai-shek got angry and scolded Zhang Zuiliang for being tainted by defeatism. Are you sure you want to say the same thing this time? No, there was no way he would have called me this late at night just to do that. There's probably another reason. Yes, Chairman. Tell me now. Honestly. Speak like a man. Chairman, please review the first attack operation once again. China's biggest enemy now is not the Communist Party, but Japan. Chiang Kai-shek was silent for a while. Zhang Zuiliang broke into a cold sweat. He expected that he would soon hear a shout coming from the receiver. However, Chiang Kai-shek showed an unexpected reaction. Keep talking. I know that the chairman hates the Communist Party. I also know that the Communist Party has been rebelling against the chairman. But Chairman, now is the time to forget our grudges and cooperate. Only then can China be protected from Japan's ambitions. Didn't you, Chairman, read Mein Kampf written by German Führer Hitler? Japan will never stop at Manchuria and will target China and all of Asia. Cooperation with the Communist Party is essential to save the Chinese people from a tragic fate. The people want it too. Zhang Zuiliang was completely unaware that Hitler had recommended Chiang Kai-shek to arrest him. How about the chairman come to Zen in person? I want you to come here and see the reality. Is that what you think? Yes. Okay. I understand. Anyway, my thoughts are complicated these days. So, came to Nanjing with Yang Huqing. I'd like to talk to you. Is that true? Zhang Zuiliang couldn't believe it. Chairman Zhang, who was as immovable as a stone Buddha, has finally changed his mind. Although he had not yet declared that he would cooperate with the Communist Party, Zhang Zuiliang thought it was a big change just because Chiang Kai-shek listened to his story. If you meet him and tell him your true feelings, he will definitely change his mind. Okay, Chairman. I will go to Nanjing soon. Good. The phone was disconnected. What did Zhang Zuiliang say? He asked me to come to Zen. Wow, what Führer Hitler said was right. Chiang Kai-shek shook his head as if it was not worth saying anymore. Arrest those two as soon as they arrive in Nanjing. Chiang Kai-shek eventually accepted my advice. Zhang Zuiliang and Yang Huqing were arrested and taken away as soon as they arrived in Nanjing. After interrogation, Zhang Zuiliang first stated that he was in secret with the Communist Party and that he had invited Chiang Kai-shek to Zen and planned to detain him if he did not listen to what he said. Yang Huqing also belatedly admitted his charges, but it was a futile act. Zhang Zuiliang was stripped of all his official positions and imprisoned for plotting treason, and Yang Huqing was executed by firing squad. The Northeast Army, which lost its commander, revolted, but Chiang Kai-shek advised them to surrender, and when artillery shells fell on the Zen area, they immediately put an end to it. After the incident was resolved, Chiang Kai-shek thanked me through the Chinese ambassador to Germany. He said that his fate and that of China almost fell off a cliff. Mr. President, how did you know such a thing was going on in China? I'm sorry, Goring, but there are some things I can't tell you. Just know that I have a secret source that you probably don't know about. You can't say it's because I'm from the future. This incident was soon forgotten because everyone believed everything I said. As a result, the Xi'an incident never happened. According to history, Zhang Zuiliang and Yang Huqing, fooled by the Communist Party's propaganda, lured Chiang Kai-shek to Zen, detained him, and eventually obtained an agreement from Chiang Kai-shek to stop the attack operation and cooperate with the Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party, which escaped the crisis of destruction thanks to the two idiots, concentrated on expanding its power while the Kuomintang was fighting against Japan, and grew in size. After World War II, it started a Chinese civil war and took over mainland China. China, controlled by the Communist Party, intervened in the Korean War and prevented the unification of North Korea, and in the 21st century, it cast a dark shadow on the world by engaging in all kinds of nuisances and evil acts, such as the Northeast Project and the Wuhan pneumonia. Should I leave it like that? If you are simply planning to make money by doing business with China, there is no need to tell Chiang Kai-shek about Zhang Zuoliang's plot. However, since I was born in a free country, I know better than anyone else the pain of division and the damage it causes, but I cannot just leave the culprit alone. While gaining Chiang Kai-shek's favor, he also prevents possible disasters in advance. Plus, it's great to resolve the grudges of veterans and separated families. Chiang Kai-shek expressed to me that China needed Germany's excellent weapons and scientific technology and that he wanted to import them. There was also an opinion that they would like to sit face to face and have a detailed conversation instead of sending a telegram. Things are going smoothly. Chapter 28 Let's 1. December 26, 1936. Chiang Kai-shek ordered the start of the 6th First Attack Operation. Chiang Kai-shek has only one goal, to completely eradicate the Communist Party in China. To prepare for the future decisive battle with Japan, we must first strike down all the hateful communists who are attacking us every day. As long as they live and breathe, China will never be at peace. The German Military Advisory Group in China, led by Lieutenant General Alexander von Falkenhausen, led the National Revolutionary Army and took the lead in defeating the Communist Party. Thanks to their activities, the National Revolutionary Army continued to win and the Communist Party quickly lost its foothold. On January 20, 1937, while the first attack was in progress, Chiang Kai-shek arrived in Berlin, Germany, leading his staff. Welcome, President Zhang. Thank you very much for coming that far. Thank you for your hospitality, Führer Hitler. I never thought he would come out to meet me in person. Chiang Kai-shek looked quite surprised when I personally met him at the airport. I smiled and waved my hand. A noble person is coming, so how could I not come to meet him? Isn't China a friend of Germany? Thank you so much for thinking that way. Chiang Kai-shek looked at the red flags hoisted all over Berlin with a happy face, fluttering in the wind. You would never have imagined that the Chinese flag, which was despised by the international community, would be displayed in a major European city. Even before the meeting began, the smile on Chiang Kai-shek's face never left. What Chiang Kai-shek wanted from Germany had already been decided. Weapons, more weapons. And Germany's excellent science and technology. Everything possible, from mechanical manufacturing equipment to pharmaceuticals. As the president knows, a ground operation to eradicate the Chinese Communist Party is currently underway. Thanks to the fact that the advisors sent by the president are all highly talented, the first attack operation has been progressing without any problems to date. That's really fortunate. But there is still a dire shortage of weapons and medicine. All of our factories in China are operating, but this is not enough. We desperately need medicine to treat the technicians and soldiers needed for the factories we will build in China. Well, sir. In return, Chiang Kai-shek offered enormous resources mined in China. Even so, I had no reason to refuse Chiang Kai-shek's request because I was sincere about securing minerals necessary for waging war. Since both sides had the same interests, the negotiations were concluded quickly. We give weapons and technology to China, and China gives us minerals. Not only infantry small arms, but also anti-tank guns, anti-aircraft guns, howitzers, as well as tanks and armored vehicles were exported to China. Even the No. 1 tank, which had been proven obsolete during the Spanish Civil War, was an excellent tank from China's perspective, so Chiang Kai-shek accepted the price I suggested without hesitation. Are you saying I scammed you? What are you saying? I just sold the product at a reasonable price to the person who was willing to buy it. He said he would buy it no matter the price, so why would I refuse? I may have ripped off a bit on some items, but that's what business is all about. It's a battle between swords and swords, with both sides desperately trying to make a profit. Anyway, I guess it worked out because we were both satisfied. Thank you, President. Thanks to Germany, China will be able to leap forward into an even greater country. That's too much praise, right? I will also earnestly pray that the Communist Party will completely disappear from mainland China as soon as possible. Is this really true? That's right. Have people been deceived all this time? Without realizing it, Henry Wilson began rereading the contract from cover to cover. The contract stated an amount that he could not even imagine. If you have this money, you won't have to worry about not only your home loan, but also your children's school fees and your parents' hospital bills. Is that it? Even an old car in the garage can be replaced with a new car straight from the factory. You just need to come to Germany and help with the work for 2 years. The money will then be deposited into the teacher's account. I promise. Really, this much money? I just can't believe it. So does that mean I'm only seen as a fraud? I don't mean that, but wouldn't you still have doubts at least once? Then there is nothing we can do. After all, the decision is up to the teacher. If the teacher doesn't like it, I won't encourage it anymore. Anyway, there are quite a few people other than you who want to meet me. I'm not sure if we'll all be able to meet today. Now, wait. As the man turned to leave, Wilson called the man to him in an urgent voice. I have a contract. It's only been 2 years, can't you do that? At Wilson's words, the man smiled as if he knew that would happen. A wise choice, sir. Then, please pack your bags and come to the location specified in the contract 2 days later. Instead, you should not discuss the contract with anyone. Also to the teacher's family. If you break this rule, our relationship with you is over. Of course, I can't give you even a penny. Don't worry about that. My family completely believes anything I say anyway. Okay then. I'll see you in 2 days. The Reichsmarinamt, RMA, which was in charge of the design of German ships from 1889 to 1919, was a dream among all ship designers in Germany due to its highly innovative and advanced organizational atmosphere, high compensation, and treatment on the same level as high-ranking officers. It led to work. However, when Germany lost the war, RMA was also disbanded, which deprived Germany of the advanced technology essential for ship design. Although RMA was revived by changing its name to Manamt, it made the mistake of hiring a large number of novice designers who could not even cross the RMA threshold to make up for the departure of a large number of high-quality talents. With the talent pool already low and the budget also shrinking, the upper echelons of the Navy, which was competing with the Army and Air Force, urged it to produce results as quickly as possible. Even if you at least give them plenty of time, they're going to the extent of pestering you when it's not enough. Of course, there is no way there will be good results. As all of this created synergy in a negative way, MA fell from the best organization in Germany to the worst organization in Germany. However, this does not mean that all ships designed by MA were the scrap class. As a country that has been a naval powerhouse for a long time, even if it is rotten, the basic performance was acceptable, but there was a problem somewhere in all of them. As a representative example, the Bismarck-class battleship, which was the face of the Kriegsmarine, was equipped with separate surface auxiliary guns and large-diameter anti-aircraft guns, so it was difficult to effectively respond to enemy air attacks, and the turrets were not equipped with any special safety devices, so they were frequently exposed to seawater. Suffered from a breakdown. Even the performance of anti-aircraft guns was substandard, and even these were equipped with only 16 guns, making them extremely vulnerable to enemy attacks. In addition, there are numerous other problems, such as the fire control system and the decrease in defense due to poor side armor, but it is too tiring to explain them all, so I will omit them. The battleship, the most important force, looks like this, but there is no way the other things were fine. In the case of the destroyer, it boasted a very large size even among the destroyers of the time, but its actions were greatly restricted due to its poor armament and short range. For a guy with a short range, it's a bonus that he's equipped with 6 boilers. Considering that all of this directly leads to a decrease in performance as well as a waste of resources and costs, it was a task that needed to be solved urgently. To solve these problems, the help of talented people was needed. A lot of that too. I brought back as many designers as possible from the previous RMA back to MA, and ordered FU Director Wilhelm Henries and SD Director Heydrich to recruit British and American ship designers and bring them to Germany. And we also gave the Navy enough time. There is no need to produce results right away, so stop looking for MA and take your time. No matter what the Army and Air Force say, don't be too impatient. Because I know better than anyone else that not only the Admiral, but all Navy personnel are suffering in unison. Even if it takes some time, a more perfect product should come out. The difference in performance directly affects the life and death of soldiers in actual combat. That is a very wise statement, Mr. President. Perhaps because he was still bothered by the Army and Air Force's sarcasm that they received a lot of budget but had no actual results, Leather seemed so moved that he even cried when I assured him that I could do it slowly myself. I just said a few words to say goodbye, but there's no need to cry. I feel burdened for no reason. In addition to recruiting British and American talent, there was one important task: importing Japanese technology. If nothing else, Japan's naval technology is far superior to Germany's. Even during World War II, Germany had a precedent of inviting engineers from Japan to build ships, so there was nothing that could not be done. Although it is unpleasant, it is something that cannot be helped. Japan's naval technology and know-how were absolutely necessary to make the German Navy, even if it could not reach a first-rate level, at least capable of fighting. While Germany, which was the second largest naval power in the world after Britain, collapsed due to its defeat in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Japan, a latecomer, was a victorious country and was able to accelerate the strengthening of its naval power. As a result, Japan had a powerful navy competing for second or third place in the world even before the outbreak of World War II. In comparison, the German navy was only at the starting point and was only at a second-rate level. The position has completely reversed in just a few decades. The reality of a former student becoming a current teacher is quite humiliating, but in order for a person to develop, he or she must be able to acknowledge reality and accept it. I met with Shigenori Togo, the Japanese ambassador to Germany, and frankly told him that Japan's help was needed to strengthen Germany's naval power. Originally, Shigenori Togo did not have a favorable view of Nazi Germany, the ultimate anti-Semitism, because his wife was Jewish. Because of this, he clashed with the military, which valued relations with Germany, and was replaced by Hiroshi Oshima, who was pro-German. However, in today's history, the Dogo's attitude toward me has been very friendly thanks to my personal action in rejecting anti-Semitism. I understand, Mr. President. I will immediately contact the home country and convey Your Excellency's wishes. Thank you, Ambassador. As of 1937, the evaluation of me in Japan was ambiguous. While some people were in awe of Germany, which had turned a defeated country into a powerful country again in less than 5 years, there were also those who thought it was an enemy of Japan because Mein Kampf warned of Japan's ambition to invade Asia. In particular, there was some suspicion about the fact that he secretly invited Sun Kijang and Nam Soo-ryong, who won medals at the Olympics, to eat with him and praise them diligently. Why does the German Führer make such a joke? What on earth was in Hitler's head? In this way, from the perspective of Japan, Adolf Hitler, was a person who was difficult to define in one word. However, no matter what the public's opinion was, the exchange proposal from Germany, a European power, was a temptation too sweet for Japan to resist. Although Germany's navy was only second-rate, its army was considered the world's strongest along with France, so the Japanese military, which desperately wanted exchanges with the German military, responded positively to my proposal. Britain and France, which are colonizing Southeast Asia, will hinder the future growth of the empire. Germany also has Britain and France as potential enemies. Germany's advanced technology and weapons are absolutely necessary for the development of the imperial army. But doesn't Germany have a close relationship with China? I don't think Germany will be a very friendly country for the empire, which must one day conquer China. It's all about obtaining Chinese minerals. Moreover, the empire does not import weapons from Germany either. This might be a good opportunity to turn Germany's attention from China to the empire. Although there were voices of opposition and concern, the general response from the Japanese government and military was welcome. Japan handed over its naval technology, ship and torpedo designs, to Germany, and in return received various weapons from Germany. The item that Japan welcomed the most was none other than the blueprints for Panzer III. The development of Panzer III was halted due to repeated failures, but despite this, the Ordnance Bureau was unable to let go of its attachment to Panzer III and modified the existing design to create a new blueprint. They seem like tough guys. Why are you so obsessed? Who will die if we don't make this? The development of Panzer IV has already reached its final stage, so there is no need to build Panzer III. Don't waste your precious time, just give up. But Mr. President, this time will definitely be different. So no. Don't change it. I have no intention of changing it. Go back quickly. The Ordnance Bureau's persuasion did not work for me, who had already made up my mind to mass-produce the fourth tank. I've been saying this for a long time, but number 4 is much better? Unlike number 4, number 3 cannot mount a 75mm long gun barrel, so it can only be used as an assault gun. The blueprint for number 3 was almost destined to rot in the warehouse forever, but surprisingly, this complex of sorrows shown during transactions with Japan. Oh, these are German tanks. Look at this beautiful exterior. It's so beautiful. Even though it may be the second tank, the first tank would not have anything special from the Japanese perspective, but they showed great interest, perhaps because it was a German-made tank. Was the expression used in this case to say that someone else's rice cake looks bigger? Because Panzer IV was still under development, there were only 2 tanks that could be shown to Japan, Tank 1 and Tank 2. The Japanese continued to express their exclamation when they saw number 1 and number 2, but perhaps they were not satisfied with this and made new demands from me. Are there any other tanks? Although there is a tank number 4, it is still under development, and even within the army, there was opposition, saying they could not leak a new, underdeveloped weapon. I also had no intention of showing Panzer IV. The alternative that came to mind was Tank 3. It's a blueprint for a new tank that Germany is developing. At that time, I remembered the blueprint for number 3 and showed it to the Japanese negotiating team. As expected, they showed great interest in the blueprint. It is planned to be equipped with a 37mm 45 caliber main gun, similar to the Pak-36, on the front of the hull and 15mm on the sides. The maximum speed reaches 69 km per hour. How is it? As of 1937, the only tanks with the most powerful performance among Japan's tanks were the Type 95 light tank Hueco and the Type 97 heavy tank Chaya. The Type 97 57mm tank gun mounted on the Chaya is only used for infantry, with little armor penetration, so it is not something that can be used in tank battles in the future. Unlike the Kai-Ha, the 37mm Type 94 tank gun mounted on the Hueco has acceptable performance for the Japanese military, penetrating 45mm armor plate at 300 meters, but due to design issues, the tank commander is responsible for all tasks, including commanding, shooting, and loading the tank alone. Therefore, its combat efficiency is significantly lower than that of the third tank, which is separated into a commander, gunner, and ammunition operator. In contrast, the 3rd Panzer was superior to any other tank possessed by the Japanese military in terms of firepower, defense, and mobility. Actually, there was a lot of opposition even in the army, saying we shouldn't show this, but I brought it specifically. Well, is that really true? Would you lie as president? I also had a lot of worries. Is it okay to show this? However, the naval technology and torpedo designs that your country will pass on to Germany are also valuable, and we cannot hide them. Isn't it true that you have to make the most of the profit but pay the price? Yeah, it's a lie. Of course, it is true that there has been talk within the army about releasing the design of tank number 3. However, it did not reach the level of opposition, and it was decided that it would be advantageous to demand more from Japan using this as bait since it would not be used anyway, so it was made public. The result was a huge success. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I don't know what to do with myself because you're willing to give me such a precious item. I have to speak straight. I sold it for the full price, so how could it be something I gave away? I just hope it can be of some help in returning home. Of course. This deepens the relationship between Japan and Germany. Whoever wants. I'm only doing business because I need your skills, and I have no intention of becoming friends with you guys. Well, anyway, drinking kimchi soup was up to the other person, so I left it alone. The Japanese negotiators returned dreaming of a more powerful army armed with technology from Germany, an advanced country, and the Kriegsmarine generals happily toasted the warship technology and torpedoes they would receive from Japan. The success of this negotiation raised my status within the military as a bonus. Chapter 29 Let's 2. At MA, we are eagerly trying out the advanced technologies and various blueprints handed down from Japan. This put an end to the naval issue. The rest is up to leather. What was handed over from Japan was not only ships and torpedoes. She was something of equal importance to him, perhaps even more important than him. The only difference was that it required a small amount of money and persuasion rather than a shobu with the Japanese government. It is an honor to invite you, Mr. President. The name of the short-built Japanese man who trembles like a reed is Shintaro Yuda. He kept blinking as if everything surrounding him was in vain. This is all a dream, right? If you close your eyes once and open them, they will be back to normal. Okay. So why am I still in Germany? There's even Hitler in front of you? Could it be that he resembles Hitler? Yes, probably. Because his mustache is so common. Nice to meet you, Mr. Shintaro Yuda. Adolf Hitler. Welcome to the Third Reich. The interpreter who worked with Hitler translated German into Japanese and relayed it to Shintaro. Only then did Shintaro realize that this was not a dream but reality. Adolf Hitler. Author and current German Führer. The person I only knew about in newspapers and news films is now in front of me. I was worried what would happen if you didn't come to Germany, but I'm glad. Wasn't it difficult to get to Germany? Wow, it was a very comfortable trip. This person keeps shaking. Anyone who sees me will think that I am holding on to your life and threatening you. I'm in peace. Oh, sorry. There was one reason why Hitler invited Yuda to Germany. It was because of Yuda's invention. It's my invention? Exactly. Isn't Yagi Yuda antenna your work? Yagi Yuda antenna. An antenna produced in 1926 by Japanese engineer Shintaro Yuda and his advisor Hidetsugu Yagi. The name Yagi Yuda was created after the last names of Shintaro Yuda and Hidetsugu Yagi. While the existing antenna radiates radio waves by flowing current through the antenna element, the Yagi Yuda antenna radiates radio waves in the direction by arranging a waveguide with a short wire in front of the half-wave dipole antenna and a reflector with a long wire at the back. It was a groundbreaking product that could not only shoot but also receive transmitted radio waves with high sensitivity. However, contrary to the name Yagi, Both design and production were handled by Shintaro Yuda alone. However, Yagi used his authority to steal Yuda's achievements and later made a lot of money by starting a company called Yagi Antenna. Of course, Yuda got nothing back. Although he had become accustomed to people's indifference and Yagi's abuse of power, he was unable to maintain his composure when meeting Führer Hitler. Moreover, he is interested in his own invention, which people think is Yagi's invention. This is not a dream but a true story? Really? I know roughly what hardships you have gone through so far. The guy called the advisor took all of the teacher's credit and continued to manipulate him from then on. The paper is also under their joint name, and his patent is his own. However, you did not give up on engineering and continued your research. It would be difficult to find someone with as much patience as you, even in Germany. It is an honor. No one in Japan recognized his achievements, but the leader of a distant, foreign country with no relation to Japan recognized his efforts. Yuda, overcome with sorrow from the past, shed tears without realizing it. Calm down, sir. Hitler, embarrassed by Yuda's tears, took out a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Yuda. The product you created is truly innovative. However, I was dumbfounded to hear that your country, instead of recognizing your hard work, completely ignored it. The Yagi Yuda antenna was an essential item in the development of radar, but Yuda's home country, Japan, did not pay any attention to Yuda's work and even banned the research and development of radio equipment in Japan in 1936. This was for the absurd reason that citizens became ideologically unsound non-citizens by listening to foreign broadcasts on shortwave radio. The Japanese military did not use radar because they thought it was a way to inform the enemy of their location, and were busy ignoring Yuda, who emphasized the importance of radio wave detection. On the other hand, countries such as Britain, the United States, and Germany, which recognize the importance of radar, put all their efforts into developing radar technology and put it to great use in actual combat. It was not until the end of 1941 that Japan began to research radar technology, but it was too late. So, sir, I have a suggestion for you. Please tell me. Can you come to Germany and continue radar research? We will give you everything you want, including research and living expenses. Your work is an essential technology for the development of Germany, and indeed of all mankind. Not only does it promise to support his long-cherished research, but he also promises top-class treatment, and there is no one who can refuse this. Yuda's answer was already decided. All right. Please just leave it to me. Shintaro Yuda was assigned a large mansion and a state-of-the-art laboratory located on the outskirts of Berlin. Along with assistants, an interpreter, a driver and a personal chef to help him with his research. Indeed, it is said that Yuda has been concentrating on research since the day he unpacked the mansion. That's good, that's good. It's good for Yuda because he can continue the research he wants in an affluent environment, and it's good for us because we can obtain the latest radar technology. This is mutual aid, this is what I mean. The fact that Britain had great fun in air warfare on the British mainland by using radar is already a very famous story among the military. At this time, Germany, which was hit hard by radar, also accelerated radar research and put it to good use. However, the problem was that the enemy was so deceptive that it seemed to be of little use. However, Japan did not use this good thing for the reason that its location could be revealed to the enemy, and began researching it only in August 1941, when it obtained information on air warfare over the British mainland. By the time anything useful was found, the war situation had already deteriorated to the point where it could not be reversed, so it was a waste of time. You idiots. Well, thanks to this, we were able to obtain a genius who only comes along once every 100 years, so maybe we should be grateful. They've given you a lot of talented people who are said to be from Germany, so he'll be fine on his own. Negotiations with Henry Ford of the United States were also concluded successfully. To begin with, Henry Ford was friendly to the Nazis from the start, so it was just a negotiation and there was nothing to call it a negotiation. This is a fact that people are surprisingly unaware of, but contrary to the Roosevelt administration's hostile stance toward Nazi Germany, American companies maintained very close relationships with Germany until Germany declared war on the United States. American companies actively cooperated with Germany's rearmament and war effort.